Chapter 1434. Dr. Cheen. The patient in bed 6 with a fracture in his calf secretly tried to get out of bed and walk around while his family went out to get water. Right now, he has been complaining that his leg hurts. The tall and straight figure was dressed in a long white doctor's gown. When he walked, his gaze was cold. When he pushed open the door of the ward, he saw the young man lying on the bed holding his leg in pain, moaning in pain. "Dr. Cheen, you're here. Quickly take a look. This child is just disobedient. I already told him not to get out of bed and walk around. But he insisted that he was young and not afraid. He even said that it had been so long since the operation, so he could get out of bed and jump a few times. In the end, he only came down and walked for a few minutes." When the patient's family saw that the attending doctor had arrived, he quickly stood up and walked over. "Will he be fine? Will it affect his recovery after the operation?" The man did not speak. He only walked to the bed and looked down at the boy in his early 20s. This boy was a university student. He was too fierce when passing the ball in the school's basketball club competition. He was accidentally kicked down by the opponent and twisted to the ground, causing a fracture in his ankle and calf. It had been almost a month since the operation. However, because the boy still had other illnesses, and some people in his family had a say in the hospital, the Department of Internal Medicine and the Department of Orthopedics would occasionally come over to take a look. "I'm a physician," Cheen Sighting said indifferently. He casually picked up the list in the blue folder on the bed and glanced at it. He then turned to the nurse behind him and said, "Call Dr. Zhang from the Department of Orthopedics over." As soon as the little nurse saw Dr. Cheen's face, she knew that he must be very tired after the operation half an hour ago. He rarely talked to people when he was not working in the hospital. At this moment, his face looked even colder. The little nurse did not dare to ask more. She responded and quickly walked out of the ward. "Dr. Cheen, you've just finished an operation. You must be very tired. I know it's because the child is not sensible that you have to take the trouble to come and see him during your rest time. But I'm really worried about his leg." The patient's family stood by the side and saw the surprisingly good-looking male doctor's face. He spoke with some apprehension. Cheen Sighting glanced at the patient's family member coldly and said in a clear and cold voice, "The chief surgeon and the nurses should have reminded him more than once about the surgical procedures. The current situation will not affect the healing of his leg bones, but whether the rehabilitation will be smooth or not depends on his own physique and calcium absorption. No doctor can guarantee that he will be able to stand up and return to the basketball court in a few months. But if he still does not take the doctor's advice seriously, I can guarantee that he will definitely not be able to return to the basketball court in a few months." The patient's family was shocked. Cheen Sighting did not even look at the young man on the bed whose eyes were red from anxiety. When he heard the footsteps of an orthopedic doctor approaching, he walked out expressionlessly. The door of the ward opened. Dr. Zhang from the orthopedics department greeted Cheen Sighting when he saw him. "Sighting, why do you look so pale these 2 days? Have the higher-ups arranged too many surgeries for you? Have you not rested for a long time? You've been on duty recently, and there are a few very important thoracotomy surgeries that are linked together, right? It's fine. The one inside, you better treat him well. He's so young and overestimates himself. Don't really cripple his leg just like that." Cheen Sighting did not turn back. He only raised his hand slightly as a form of greeting and goodbye. He walked straight in the direction of his own consultation room. "TSK, you're only 5 or 6 years older than the one inside. You speak as if you're older." Dr. Zhang smiled and pushed the door open to enter. Cheen Sighting took the medical record of a new patient from the nurse behind him. As he looked at it, he said, "Bring bed 3 to do the blood and urine tests again. Bed 17 can stop the needles. He'll be discharged tomorrow morning. When he goes back, ask his family members to keep an eye on him. Don't go out and get exposed to the wind. Stay at home for observation." Bed 22. High City Central Hospital was the largest provincial tertiary grade A hospital in High City, and even in the nearby provinces and cities. Such a hospital did not have any free time every day. All the medical staff were busy, and it was rare for them to rest. They basically returned to the consultation room or the duty room to quickly catch up on 2 hours of sleep. Sheen Sighting had performed 2 thoracotomy surgeries from 12 o'clock last night until this morning. There would be another one in the afternoon. He urgently needed to go back and sleep for an hour. Otherwise, he would not be able to perform the surgery in the afternoon. The nurse's station was the only place in the entire hospital where all kinds of gossip and anecdotes often spread. When he returned to the consultation room and passed by the nurse's station, 2 intern nurses held 2 bags of saline as they pushed the trolley forward. As they walked, they said, "Really? The chairman of Sheeta Group suddenly passed away just like that? Sheeta used to be quite famous in High City. I used to buy their company's branded bags. The quality has always been very good. Isn't their chairman only in his 50s? Why did he die just like that? I heard that he died of illness in America. I say that Sheeta Group has always been doing well in High City. Why did he suddenly move his entire family out of High City overnight 4 years ago? Even the company's headquarters were moved to America. Could there be something fishy about this? Even if there's really something, it's not something that ordinary people like us can know. We can only listen to those rich people in gossip news." Who said that? Our hospital's Dr. Cheen is the young master of one of the 4 big families in High City. As they spoke, they suddenly felt a gaze that was as cold as an icehouse. The 2 nurses turned around and met young Master Cheen's gaze. They were so frightened that they quickly stood up straight. Then, they helplessly pushed the rollers and ran away. 9 o'clock in the evening. High City Lishui Villa. The white Porsche stopped in front of the villa, and the man got out of the car. When he came back, he was no longer wearing the hospital's white coat. He was wearing a simple casual suit. The automatic sensor lights in the villa's courtyard illuminated his body with a faint layer of gold. Sheen Sighting walked into the villa. After a tiring day, it was rare for him to come back and rest for a night. He habitually opened a bottle of wine and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. He looked in the direction of the villa opposite and was about to drink. Suddenly his phone rang. For a sudden call at this time, it must be from the hospital. Sheen Sighting put down his wine glass and picked it up. Dr. Cheen, the patient in bed 17, suddenly coughed up blood. He said he couldn't breathe. "Come and take a look." "Got it." Sheen Sighting hung up the phone and turned to walk out, leaving a glass of wine on the table by the window. The white Porsche drove out of Lishui Villa district like an arrow leaving the bow. After the car disappeared, a dim yellow light lit up in the window of the villa that had not been lived in for 4 years. Chapter 1435. 9 years ago. It was autumn in High City. The air was dry, mixed with the smell of fallen leaves. The 17-year-old Shirnianj squatted by the flower bed in High City First High School in a daze. When she called Tang Xiao a few hours ago, he was rushing to the infirmary with their class bell. It was said that the prettiest girl in the class ran 1,500 meters at the school's sports meet during her period. After that, she fell ill and became a Lindayu. Tang Xiao was taking care of someone in the infirmary. He couldn't even be bothered to say a few perfunctory words to his girlfriend. He just casually nodded and continued to ask about the prettiest girl in the class, who was crying on the bed. Shirnianj hung up the phone. After a few seconds of silence, she sent a text message to announce their breakup. The other party patiently accompanied the class bell for 2 hours before seeing the news. After that, he frantically called her. She did not pick up, and was no longer interested in contacting this person. He could not even be considered a first love, so he could not be considered a broken up. A few months ago, Tang Xiao had confessed to her. After that, the 2 of them had been in a relationship for more than 2 months. Although he was in year 3 class 2, and she was in year 2 class 2, they were 1 year apart and 1 year apart. However, Tang Xiao's family seemed to have business dealings with their family's company. Their parents and elders had met a few times, and could be considered half an acquaintance. Shirnianj, who was in her adolescence and felt that she should date, agreed under his pursuit. Tang Xiao's personality was very flamboyant and active. He liked to play basketball, and had many fans on the basketball court. However, Shirnianj did not really like him, but after all, she had agreed on a moment of impulse. She held on to the principle of being responsible for him. so she maintained an open relationship. She did not hide it from her classmates and friends. The two of them had only held hands a few times in private. It was as though they had never even kissed each other on the cheek. They could not be any more innocent. This kind of central air-conditioned type of person, who radiated heat everywhere, was not suitable for her. If it was not suitable, then end it. There was no need to waste time. Tang Xiao was also considered an influential figure in Sea City First High School. It was said that there were many influential figures in their third year of high school. However, she had been influenced by her grandfather since she was young and liked to study medicine. She never paid attention to school matters. Other than going to class, she would go to her grandfather's place to kill time. So she did not know many people. When she was 10 years old, she had developed a new type of medicine with her grandfather, who was a medical professor. She had even won some medical achievement award. Some time ago, her grandfather had developed an anti-cancer drug in the laboratory. Shi Nianj had also participated. Although she was only a helper at most, she was still a participant. In this day and age, everything needed gimmicks. It was said that in order to commend her and curry favor with the Shi family, the school planned to let her skip grades in a few days and jump from a second-year student to a third-year student. She could clearly indulge for another year, but she was asked to prepare for the college entrance examination. The elders of the Shi family actually agreed. Shi Nianj was so angry that there was nothing she could do. In autumn, school had just started. She was about to skip grades and change classes, and she was suddenly faced with the major change of losing her love. Shi Nianj felt that she had to cry or be haggard for a few days to match her current state. Otherwise, she would be too heartless. Therefore, she squatted by the flower bed for a long time, unable to squeeze out a single tear. In the end, she could only put on a bitter face, planning to maintain this expression to complain to a few of her close friends. Otherwise, if her expression was too joyful, they would definitely laugh at her for being careless. She stood up abruptly, but she forgot that she had been squatting here for at least an hour. She stood up too quickly, and her vision suddenly turned black. She staggered and spilled half a cup of milk tea in her hand. At the same time, she bumped into a person who had walked over from some unknown path. In front of her was a dazzling white shirt. Her cup of milk tea had spilled all over his white shirt. She looked at it in astonishment, then raised her head to look at the owner of the white shirt, then lowered her head to look at it, and then raised her head to look at him. The pearls in the cup of milk tea hung on his body and slowly dripped down Shi Nianj. She did not dare to look at his expression, but she still quickly took 2 steps back from his embrace. She braced herself and apologized. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. Your clothes were dirted by me. I'll compensate you with one, okay? How much is it? As she spoke, she was about to look for money in her school uniform pocket. The man in the white shirt only looked at her expressionlessly. It was obvious that he despised the dirty things on his body. When he saw that she was about to take out the money without saying anything, he frowned without batting an eyelid. He did not say a word and walked past with a cold expression. Ai, your clothes look very expensive. After all, I dirted them. I don't have any other intentions. I'll compensate you. Shi Nianj's observation skills were also very strong. She turned back and quickly chased after him. Move aside. The white shirt was suddenly blocked by her. When he spoke, his voice was cold and indifferent. It was clear that he did not have much patience. Although he disliked her, he did not intend to argue with her about such a shirt. Shi Nianj was shocked by his cold and distant expression. She stared at his face for a while and blushed for some reason. Damn it. This was definitely the first time in her 17 years of life. She was the daughter of Shida Group. Ever since she was young, she had seen all kinds of rich people and all kinds of good-looking boys. However, this was the first time she had seen such a good-looking one. This person, and let's call him White Shirt for now. His face was handsome, his hair was short, and his skin was very white and clean. His entire body seemed to be written with the words "Don't get close to strangers." His aura was cold, and he had the reticence of a young man. His face was good-looking, his figure was tall, and his fingers were also very good-looking. She could still smell the faint fragrance she had smelled when she accidentally bumped into his arms. It smelled like detergent. It smelled very good. For the first time, the 17-year-old girl experienced the feeling of her heart thumping wildly. In the past, she had never liked anyone, nor had she done anything on purpose. However, at this moment, her consciousness was filled with the desire to get to know him. In the end, the only thing he said was, "Get out of my way." After that, he didn't say anything else. When she stubbornly tried to stop him again, and stupidly took out $100 bills and stuffed them into his hand, he looked at her as if she was a lunatic, flung his hand away, and walked around her. Cherniange looked at his back view and thought to herself, "Oh my God, even his back view is so good looking." She then lowered her head to look at the money in her hand, wondering if she had given him too little money. Otherwise, if she had the chance to see him again, she would find a shirt shop to swipe her card. At least she had to compensate him. But he was really so handsome. Her heart was beating so fast. At that time, Cherniange was still a straightforward girl. A 17-year-old girl was wholeheartedly chasing after her male god Qin. At that time, Dr. Qin had yet to experience the smoothness of growing up. In other words, at that time, Knife Qin was not Knife Qin. He was Qin Gao Lung, a proper flower on a high mountain. It was very difficult to chase after him. Chapter 1436. 3 days later, Monday, Year 3 Class 6, Dean he sent Cherniange in. At that time, it happened to be the form teacher's class. Teacher Zhao stopped for a moment. "Let me tell everyone that this is a new student in our Class 6. It's Cherniange, who won 2 medical achievement awards at the age of 17. She just skipped a grade from Year 2. Let her introduce herself, and then continue with the class." The headmaster then patted Cherniange's shoulder and gave her an encouraging look. He then called the form teacher to the corridor and said a few words. Cherniange stood in this new class of the new school year. No matter how she usually behaved, in front of so many unfamiliar classmates, she still felt a little uncomfortable. To say that she was shy, it seemed a little pretentious. To say that she was excited, she was about to rush for the college entrance examination. She didn't even have time to cry about her bad luck. What was there to be excited about? The form teacher, Teacher Zhao, said at the door, "Introduce yourself and choose a seat." Cherniange simply said her name and secretly looked around. She found that most of the seats in the class were full. There was only a quiet girl sitting in the second row in front. The seat beside her was empty. There were 2 more seats at the back. She swept her gaze behind her, and her eyes lit up. White shirt. Wasn't that the white shirt she had been worried about for days? He was actually a senior in Year 3. No, she was in the same class as him now. The seat next to him was empty. Usually, there were only 2 reasons for sitting in the back row. Either they were students who were too bad at school and refused to be disciplined, or they were very tall. They didn't want to block the students' line of sight behind them, so they sat in the back row. When she bumped into him that day, she realized that he was definitely more than 1.8 meters tall. Year 3 boys actually had a chance to grow taller. Right now he was more than 1.8 meters tall. In the future, he would definitely be taller. As for why the seat next to such a handsome person was empty, she was not in the mood to think about it. Without even considering it, she walked over and sat beside White Shirt. Cherniange's face was expressionless, but her heart was a little excited. When she put down her school bag, her hands trembled slightly. However, the deskmate she had just chosen gave her a very cold and unapproachable look at this moment. Cherniange mistakenly thought that his deskmate had only applied for leave today. She subconsciously asked softly, "Is there anyone sitting here?" The boy sitting in front of her turned around and mouthed, "No one's here." At the same time, he gestured to her not to sit there. She had lived for 17 years, but this was the first time she had ever thought about a boy. Since there was no one else, how could she not sit? Deskmate, this was a deskmate. She wasn't leaving. Cherniange smiled at the boy in front of her and sat firmly in her seat. She then turned to look at the white shirt beside her. Today, he was wearing his school uniform jacket. Even the white school uniform gave off the smell of a white shirt. So handsome, so handsome. How could there be such a good-looking man? So handsome, so handsome. The man in the white shirt looked at her again, because of her strange and passionate gaze, then turned his head to the side, and did not say a word from beginning to end. Teacher Zhao entered the classroom, and his gaze first landed on the second row. He was surprised that Shi Nianj was not sitting in front. When he saw that she was sitting in Qin Sighting's seat, he subconsciously quickly glanced at the Qin family's crown prince. He saw that the crown prince's brows were filled with dissatisfaction, but he did not show anything. He thought for a moment and said, "All right, sit there first. I'll adjust it later." Shi Nianj nodded, thinking to herself that she wouldn't adjust it. She took out all kinds of new textbooks from her bag one by one. She was actually not a top student. She only relied on the medical achievements that her grandfather had brought her to do. Suddenly, she was in the third year of high school. She definitely couldn't keep up. She didn't really understand what the first class was about. After class, she was called to the office by the form teacher. She told her about the situation in the class, and showed her the report cards of the class and the school year. She pointed at the names of the students who were ranked 5th, 7th, and 10th in the school year. "I know you might not be able to keep up at the beginning. These students are all from our class. You have a lively personality, and should be able to play with your classmates very soon. Usually find them to study more and ask them to help you. Then, take some time to read all the textbooks in the second year. That way, you'll be able to keep up very quickly." Shi Nianj looked at the report card, and realized that the name of the top student in the school year, Qin Sighting, was also written in grade 3 class 6. She pointed at the name and said, "This is also in our class, right? He's the top student in the school year. Teacher, why didn't you call his name earlier?" Teacher Zhao, "Forget about this." Shi Nianj did not understand. Seeing that she did not understand the situation in the third year at all, Teacher Zhao sighed and said with a smile, "Student Qin is your deskmate now." The male god was a top student. Shi Nianj very shallowly fell an inch deeper. Earlier on, during class, she had secretly glanced at the person beside her. At that time, he did not look at her at all. She could not see his eyes, but just half of his face was enough to make him look good. After class, she took the opportunity to look at his eyes again. At that time she almost froze. He was really so good-looking. When he was in class, the coldness on his body would be slightly restrained. The slightly serious and calm expression on his face was even more captivating. "Speaking of student Qin, I suggest you change your seat. In the past 3 years, the seat beside him has been empty. Student Qin usually likes to be quiet, and is used to being alone. You shouldn't be able to experience the joy of a third year sitting next to him. Why don't you change to another seat? What fun can there be in the third year?" Teacher Zhao, "At the very least, you have to get to know the other new students. You probably won't feel the love of classmates from student Qin." "No need, I'm not changing." "Why not? It might not be appropriate for a lively person like you to sit next to him." It's fine. Even if he's an iceberg, I can tolerate it. It's not like there aren't any other seats. Why should I tolerate it?" "Because he's handsome." Teacher Zhao pushed his glasses and smiled helplessly. Shi Nianj was determined to sit with Qin Sighting. After persuading her for a while, Teacher Zhao was almost amused by her. Children nowadays were really difficult to manage, especially Shi Nianj, a child who had grown up in the Shi family's love. She was even more straightforward, and did not know how to restrain her emotions. With her temper, if she stayed by the young master's side for a week, she would probably cry and ask to change seats. After all, she was the little ancestor of the Shi family. She could not say much, and could only wait until she hurt herself. Chapter 1437. However, it was not up to the teacher to decide whether Shi Nianj could sit in that seat for a long time. Although the Qin family's young master had good academic results, and was outstanding in all aspects, it was also true that he was cold, and did not like to interact with others. Their high school was ranked first in all aspects in the country, so in a place like High City, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, the children of various large families would also attend school here. They had seen many famous and wealthy families, so they were no longer surprised. However, the Qin family, one of the four big families in High City, naturally could not be treated the same as the other famous families. After all, rich people were not all on the same level. Qin Sighting's IQ was very high. In fact, other than his low-key and cold personality, there was no other problem. Seeing that his grades were always first, he did not like anyone disturbing him, so the school acquiesced. Thus, in the past 3 years, they did not force him to have a deskmate. Today, Shi Nian's courage was commendable. She did not even know that Qin Sighting was in the 3rd year of high school. She rushed to his side and sat down. When Shi Nian returned to the classroom, the next class had already begun. It was a history class. Year 3 Class 6 was a science class, so the history class was naturally very relaxed. It was equivalent to a self-study class. She politely greeted the teacher and returned to her seat. Her male god, who was a straight-A student, was writing a physics paper with his head lowered. A few minutes later, he picked up a bottle of mineral water and took a sip. Seeing his movements when he drank the water, and seeing his Adam's apple roll slightly when he swallowed, Shi Nian could not help but swallow as well. From her angle, she could only see the side of his face. This student Qin really did not like to talk to others. He refused to tilt his face in her direction, and had always been doing his own things. He did not feel anything when such a big person appeared beside him. However, this was also good. At the very least, he would not chase her away from this seat. The form teacher said that his personality was too cold, and he did not like to interact with others. Shi Nian thought to herself that this had nothing to do with her. She would not provoke him, and would just sit by the side, and look at him a few more times every day. A pleasing boy, so handsome, she could endure it no matter what. Being a transfer student was actually a very torturous process. Furthermore, Shi Nian was 1 year younger than the students in this class. After class, the other women would go out to the toilet together. The boys would hook their arms around each other's shoulders and chat about games, playing basketball, and where to go after school. Shi Nian did not have nothing to do. The only thing she could do was sit in her seat and admire her idol's face. From the beginning to the end, Qin Sighting did not look at her. After class, he got up and went out for a while. She did not know if he went to the toilet or the teacher's office for something. In short, when he returned, his expression was calm and nothing could be seen. It was likely that he did not take the initiative to ask the teacher to change her seat. After he sat down again, Shi Nian's gaze quietly shifted from the fountain pen on his table to his face. When he wasn't around just now, she had been looking at his pen. It was a pure black fountain pen. When he was using this pen to write the physics paper, his handwriting was very beautiful. She had been peeking her head out to look at it. But now that he was back, she definitely had to look at him. Before class started, she leaned closer to him and said in a low voice, "The shirt you wore last time can't be cleaned at all, right? You really don't need me to compensate." Qin Sighting did not even look at her. He did not say a word. Coincidentally, at this moment the bell rang. Shi Nian quickly tidied up the books on her desk and took them out. At this moment, a cold breeze blew in from the window beside her. It was not cold. After all, it was just autumn. However, the paper on her desk that she had yet to pick up suddenly flew up and flew past Qin Sighting. It then landed by his feet, which was the aisle beside his desk. It was already time for class, so she could not stand up to pick it up. She knew that he was unwilling to pay attention to her, but she had to hand in that paper during self-study in the afternoon. If someone stepped on it or lost it, it would be over. She braced herself and poked his arm with her finger. "That my paper. Can you help me pick it up?" However, Qin Sighting did not move as though he did not hear her. Shi Nian could only gently tug at his sleeve. "Do me a favor. My paper is over there. If someone steps on it later, I won't be able to write." He was still unmoved. He did not even impatiently retract his arm from the table. Shi Nian had no choice. She looked at him for a while, and saw that he really couldn't be bothered to look at her. The teacher was already teaching, so she couldn't make too much of a commotion. She could only turn back and show a big smile to the male student at the table behind Qin Sighting. She whispered, "Student, can you help me pick up the papers? Sorry to trouble you." The boy at the back table was a tall and strong fatty. However, Even if he was so fat that he could barely squeeze into a seat, he definitely did not dare to push the table forward and squeeze into Qin sighting. This little fatty usually sat at the back, and very few girls would talk to him. Suddenly, when the beautiful new girl smiled and begged him, the little fatty instantly blushed. He quickly bent down to help her pick up the papers in front of her, and handed them to her. "Thank you." Sure enough, other than the iceberg product beside her, the other students still had some love. But who asked Qin sighting to be handsome? It was enough that he was handsome. If he was not easy to get along with, then so be it. It was not bad to be a pleasing statue and accompany her in class every day. "No, you're welcome." The little fatty stuttered and said with a red face, "My name is Hao Xiuxia." As Shi Nianj took the papers, her eyes lit up as she glanced at Hao Xiuxia. So shy. The little fatty's deskmate was a shy girl who did not like to talk. She suddenly burst out laughing and whispered, "You actually guessed his nickname so quickly?" The little fatty lowered his eyes shyly. Although he was fat, his facial features were actually very good-looking. If he lost weight and worked out, he might become a handsome man in the future. "My name is Shi Nianj. Please take care of me in the future." As Shi Nianj spoke, she took out 2 bottles of yogurt from her bag and gave 1 bottle to Hao Xiuxia and his deskmate, Zhao Xiaoqing. Before the teacher noticed their small movements, she quickly turned around and placed the papers back into the desk. Although Qin sighting ignored her and did not help her pick up the papers, she heard that the fatty behind her could not help but secretly open the yogurt and drink it. She really did not have a good memory. She secretly scolded herself for being shallow, but she could not resist compromising because of his looks. She took out another bottle and secretly glanced at the man beside her. She handed the yogurt over under the desk and gently touched his arm. "Do you want to drink it?" Question. How is Qin Lingling going to chase? Chapter 1438. As soon as she asked, Shi Nianj felt that she had been a little too enthusiastic. However, on second thought, firstly, he was good-looking. Secondly, she had dirted his shirt before, so it was understandable for her to be nice to him. Thus, when the other party did not respond, she carefully touched him with the yogurt bottle. "You." Ever since she sat here, Qin sighting, who could not be bothered to look at her or pay any attention to her, suddenly turned his face. Shi Nianj could finally see his face clearly again. The 18-year-old boy had picturesque features, a sharp face and a high-nose bridge. However, he did not look very sharp and handsome, nor did he have exaggerated thick eyebrows and big eyes. In short, he was the kind that made one's heart flutter. He was so clean and refreshing that it made one feel as though this boy had to bathe hundreds of times every day. She felt that his entire body, even a single eyelash, was as beautiful as a fairy. His cold eyes seemed to be engraved with the distance between him and others. His expression seemed to be a little impatient. Shi Nianj raised the yogurt bottle at him, and secretly told him with her eyes that he could drink it after class. However, he expressionlessly and coldly warned her. He then retracted his gaze and did not take the yogurt. Of course, he ignored her. Shi Nianj sighed. As expected, a male god was completely different from Tang Xiao's central air conditioner. He was so good-looking, but his temper was so bad. If only Qin sighting was more easygoing, and could whisper to her and pass each other a note. How good would that be? Just as she was pondering, Zhao Xiaoqing, who was sitting behind her, gently poked her back with a pen. She turned back and saw that Zhao Xiaoqing had handed her a note. Shi Nianj took it and quietly opened it to take a look. On it was written, "You've just been promoted. If you don't know anyone, I can be your friend. Don't always provoke Almighty Qin. It's useless. He usually doesn't care about people. Give up." There was also a cute emoticon on the back of the note where the name was written. Oh, ___. Oh, Almighty Qin? Did all the third-year students call him that? Wow. Shi Nianj also replied to the note. There were 2 beautiful and cute words and symbols written on it. Okay. Oh, __. Oh, this was good. Of course, it was to get to know Zhao Xiaoqing and become friends. As for Qin sighting, he was simply too handsome. She couldn't bear to give him up. Even if it was just to be a desk mate that she could talk to normally, or an ordinary friend that she could talk to. It wasn't easy for her to wait until the class was over. The teacher left her homework and asked her to do the questions she had explained in class today using the new formulas. It seemed like she had to write down some ideas to solve the questions. Sure, Nianj was relatively good at the liberal arts, but the science subjects were more difficult to begin with. Now that she had suddenly skipped a grade and was promoted, it was even more impossible for her to understand immediately. Taking advantage of the break, she slowly pushed the book in front of her deskmate, who was trying to solve a problem. She leaned over and whispered, I don't really understand this problem. After all, I'm only in the second year of high school. Can you help me list out the formula to solve the problem? Sorry to trouble you. Qin Siding glanced at her empty book and did not even look at her. He wrote 23 next to her question. After that, he put away his pen and continued to write, ignoring her. Sure, Nianj retracted the book with a dumbfounded expression. She looked at the two handwritten numbers that were simple but beautiful. What did 23 mean? Even if she didn't understand, she knew that the teacher was asking for a formula and a solution, not to calculate a number like a primary school student. Furthermore, even if it was a number, the answer couldn't be 23. However, he was still a male god and a top student. He didn't pay much attention to her, so there must be a reason why he suddenly wrote these two numbers. Sure, Nianj was too embarrassed to continue asking him. She was about to ask Zhao Xiaoqing or Hao Xiuxia when an idea suddenly flashed in her mind. She flipped through a few pages and finally stopped at page 23. This page should be the revision questions from last semester. Sure, Nianj had never learned them, but looking at the formulas listed below, she could understand them. There were several formulas that were similar to the previous question. Did Qin Siding mean for her to find a solution to these similar questions? As expected of a male god, he taught people how to solve problems so quickly and effectively. He didn't need to waste words. Sure, Nianj flipped the book back to the previous page. Looking at the two numbers on it, all sorts of pink bubbles kept popping up in her mind. It wasn't that he ignored her. At the very least, he would write numbers for her. He wasn't pretending to be cold like other boys. He was just too lazy to talk nonsense with unrelated people. For the first time in her life, she felt that the words 2 and 3 were so beautiful. The creator of the Arabic numerals was really amazing. When Sure Nianj spoke to Qin Siding again, it was already 3 days after they became deskmates. In the past 3 days, Sure Nianj had completely gotten used to Qin Siding's coldness and unwillingness to provoke him. Clearly, the students in this class didn't dare to provoke him easily. They didn't even dare to touch his desk. Sure, Nianj felt that this was very good. At the very least, sitting in the area beside him, there weren't so many messy boys and girls coming to disturb her. Occasionally, Hao Xiuxia and Zhao Xiaoqing would talk to her. This peace and quiet was also very good. In the end, when Qin Siding suddenly spoke to her, Sure Nianj did not react for a long time. Qin Siding repeated himself before Sure Nianj looked at him in shock. You were talking to me just now. I said stand up. The boy's clear and pleasant voice hid a hint of coldness and impatience, but he still repeated himself. Oh, okay. It was time for class to end. Sure Nianj quickly stood up. Then, she saw him place a black shoulder bag on her seat. This bag looked like it should be his. Sure Nianj looked at him. Even without him saying anything, she could understand what he meant. Usually, no one sat in this seat, so his things were casually placed on the 2 seats. Right now, he was silently chasing her away. It had been 3 days. It was time for her to change seats. Sure Nianj glanced at the empty seat next to the girl who was good at studying in front of her, and did not say anything. Even though she felt that Qin Siding was really cold, arrogant, and impolite, the number 23 kept echoing in her mind. She then smiled and sat back down, as though the black bag was her own. She did not mind it being placed here. At the same time, she said, Is there no more space? Then let's put it here first. Anyway, I usually only sit on half of the chair. I can still put another bag. If you have more, put it here. After all, this was the first time Qin Siding had taken the initiative to speak to her. Although his attitude was mainly to chase her away, her little heart secretly jumped. And his voice was really nice. Even his expressionless and angry expression was nice. Chapter 1439. Zhao Xiaoqing could be considered Shi Nian's first friend after she was promoted to the third year of high school. Her hair was long and she was very beautiful. However, her personality was sometimes very shy. She wore a pair of transparent glasses and would blush as she spoke. Her personality was very soft and easygoing. Then did you often help Grandpa in his lab when you were very young? Zhao Xiaoqing felt that Shi Nian was only 17 years old, yet she had won 2 medical achievement awards. She was simply a legend. And my grandfather's personality is very good. Although he's in the medical field, he's actually an old urchin. I like to stick to him since I was young. I was also very curious about his experimental drugs. I knew that if those drugs were developed, they could save many people's lives. At first, I was just curious, but later my grandfather brought me along. Shi Nian did not hide anything and openly told him about her childhood. Wow, then you'll definitely study medicine in the future. I have this plan. I want to enter a medical university, but I don't know if my parents will agree. After all, my family is in business, and I can't follow my grandfather for the rest of my life. However, studying medicine is my goal. As the two of them were talking, Qin Sighting returned. She didn't know if he had heard the conversation between the two girls, but Shi Nian subconsciously retracted her leg that had just reached under his desk. Her entire back was pressed against the wall by the window. Seeing that Almighty Qin had returned, and that class was about to start, Zhao Xiaoqing did not dare to speak anymore. She only stuck out her tongue at Shi Nian and quickly lowered her head to tidy up the books for the next class. The next class was biology. It was more or less related to medicine. It was one of the classes that Shi Nian liked and could easily understand. She took out the book and turned to see that Qin Sighting did not move. She recalled that his books were usually placed in school. He mainly studied science. These classes like biology were not too important. His books should not be here. She pushed her book toward him and placed it in the middle of their desks. She whispered, "Let's read together." She took this opportunity to turn to look at him. When Qin Sighting was silent, his entire body gave off an unapproachable feeling of coldness and pressure. However, Shi Nian did not feel any pressure. At most she felt cold. He did not speak and only glanced at her book. He was clearly only looking at her book, but Shi Nian felt as though he was looking at her. Her heart thumped twice. How beautiful! She couldn't hold back the excitement in her heart. In the future, if you don't have a book with you in biology class, we can read together. Qin Sighting looked at the book in the middle and did not say a word. Actually, Nianj was not very thick-skinned. She just felt that his personality was cold, but he did not hate her or despise her. There were all kinds of people in this world. There was no need for everyone to learn to cater to others with a smile. Besides, as the crown prince of one of the 4 big families in High City, he really did not need to cater to anyone. The next class was physics. Teacher Zhang especially liked to give out papers. Every time he gave her a question, it would be especially difficult. After half a class, he would write down a paper and then hand out the results. Shi Nian's score was shockingly 91. She had just crammed for a few days of lessons that she had never learned in her 3rd year of high school. It was really not easy to pass. As she was very satisfied with her current results, she glanced to the side. She saw that there was a huge 120 on Qin Sighting's paper. The full score on this kind of test paper in class was 120. He was indeed a top student. He could easily finish an entire physics paper in 20 minutes and get full marks. Shi Nianj lowered her head to look at her 91 and quickly covered the number with her textbook. Big boss, I can't compare to him. I'd better cover my embarrassment myself. The last class of the weekend. The week after the start of the 3rd year of high school was especially hard. After school, Shi Nianj had just walked out of the school when she saw the commercial car parked outside. She took off the headphones she had just put on to listen to music and walked over. She saw that the window had rolled down. The person who had come to pick her up was the Shi family's driver, Uncle Qin. "Miss, Sir and Madam have recently gone abroad to discuss business. There's no one at home. Are you going back to the Sure family to eat, or to your grandfather's? Grandfather hasn't been in his own laboratory recently. Hasn't he been holding a seminar with many experts? I won't fill in the blanks at a time like this. I'll go home. Uncle Chin was about to get out of the car to open the door for her. But she had already opened the door and got into the car. After sitting down, she put on her headphones and said, "My parents are usually so busy. Usually, only the auntie who cooks is at home. I don't think I should take such a long drive back on weekends. I can find a house near the school to stay." "How can that be? Miss, how old are you? You're already living outside alone? It's not safe." "What's not safe about it? You can ask Auntie Xiang to come here every weekend to cook for me. Actually, I can eat takeout. But my parents are worried and always ask you to do it. I'm already 17, not 7. If I live near the school, I can save a lot of trouble." Uncle Chin did not speak for a while, as though he was listening to the phone. 2 minutes later he said, "Miss, I've been talking to Mr. Sure on the phone with my headphones on. Mr. Sure said that he can respect your wishes. You can take advantage of this weekend to find a neighborhood with better security facilities near the school. The family can book a house for you at any time for you to stay there first." "Okay." Sure Nianj smiled and did not say anything else. She directly amplified the music in her headphones. Since she was young, she had been considered a family pet. Everyone in the family loved her very much, but her grandmother and grandparents had left early. Only her grandfather doted on her the most, and her parents treated her well. However, because Shida Group's business was getting bigger and busier, the two of them were worried about leaving many of the company's decisions to outsiders. Therefore, they were busy every day. The only thing they could give her was concern over the phone and unlimited money. Uncle Chin and Auntie Xiang usually took care of her the most. She had been used to this kind of life since she was young and understood how busy her parents were. When she was young, she followed her grandfather. When she grew up, she was busy with her studies and became more independent. The villa where the Sure family was located was still too far from the school. It would indeed be best if she could live near the school. Sure Nianj returned to the Sure family's home that night. After finishing a few papers and homework, she called her parents on the other side of the ocean for half an hour. In fact, they asked her if she was not used to being promoted to the 3rd year of high school. She said that everything was fine and only reported the good news. She suddenly jumped a grade, so it would definitely be more difficult for her studies. However, this would be overcome with time. There was nothing much to say. She only said that the teachers and classmates were very good. She also said that her deskmate was a top student and was very warm-hearted. He would guide her in her studies. Her parents were very happy to hear this. Only then did they hang up the phone and continue working. Chapter 1440. When she returned to school on Monday, Uncle Chin had already helped her choose a few houses nearby. He handed her the map and location of the houses for her to choose. That afternoon, she had already chosen and sent a message to Uncle Chin, telling him about the house she had chosen. Uncle Chin said that they would immediately arrange for someone to clean up the existing renovations in the house. As this house had been newly renovated and had been resold not long ago, there was no need to renovate it. Uncle Chin said that he needed to test for formaldehyde and disinfect it. In another 4 to 5 days, which was the weekend, she could move in. It was rare that she did not pay much attention to Chin's sighting. After settling the matter in the afternoon, she turned to look at her deskmate and noticed that he did not seem to be in good spirits today. He would take the opportunity to sleep on the table. Furthermore, he was usually cold enough. Today, it seemed like there was some hostility between his brows. He seemed to be in a bad mood, and the word easily angered seemed to be clearly written on his handsome and cold face. Perhaps because he didn't sleep well last night, his eyes looked more hazy than usual. When he occasionally lowered his head to look at a book, looking at his white eyelids, one could tell how bad his sleep was last night. There were 3 hours of self-study time in the evening. Sure Nianj went to buy a cup of hot milk before the self-study class. As soon as she returned, she saw that Chin's sighting was preparing to take advantage of the self-study class to rest for a while. She quickly went forward and placed the milk on the desk in front of him. A good-looking man could be seen through even the slightest movement between his brows. Qin Sighting expressionlessly looked at the milk on the table, and then at her. Self-study at night will take more than 3 hours. You're so good at your studies. It's fine if you take an hour or two to sleep first. Drink some milk before sleeping. As Shi Nianj spoke, she touched the glass bottle of milk. The temperature is just right. I can drink it. Take it away. I won't drink it. His clear and cold voice was as distant as ever. He didn't sound like a classmate who had been sitting next to him for a week. Her teacher was right. When she sat next to him, she couldn't feel the slightest bit of classmate love. However, looking at his sleepy and hazy eyes, Shi Nianj felt that he looked especially harmless at this moment. She directly said, "Then I'll leave it here first. The teacher asked me to go to the office to make up for the second year's important lessons. I might not be around for the next 3 hours. If you're uncomfortable lying on the table, you can pull my chair over and lie down." With that, Shi Nianj smiled at him. Without waiting for him to speak, she picked up her books and papers and left. When she came back from the teacher's office an hour later with another set of papers, she saw that the bottle of milk was still in the corner in front of his desk. It hadn't been moved at all. The milk must be cold by now. He really didn't drink a single mouthful. However, he still placed it there and didn't throw it away. It could be considered that he didn't trample on her good intentions. He just didn't accept it. Shi Nianj walked over to pick up the papers. As she did so, she looked at him. She saw that he was lying on the desk, as though he had fallen asleep. When he slept, his face was facing down. With his arm blocking it, she couldn't see his face clearly. She could only see the young man's clean ears and smooth and beautiful neck lines. She picked up the bottle of milk and went to the supermarket downstairs. She asked the auntie in the supermarket to heat it up, and then quickly took it back. When she returned to the classroom, the second hour of self-study had just ended. Perhaps because Hao Xiuxia was too fat, he bumped into Qin Sighting's desk and woke him up. Right now he was apologizing with a red face. Qin Sighting's face was clearly filled with dissatisfaction from being woken up, but most of it was drowsiness. Hao Xiuxia apologized by the side for a long time, but he did not speak. He did not even look at him, but his handsome brows were slightly furrowed. It was clear that he was unhappy that he had been disturbed. Seeing that Hao Xiuxia was so frightened, Shi Nianj quickly walked over and shielded the little fatty behind her. She then waved her hand behind her, indicating for him to stop talking and leave first. However, Hao Xiuxia refused to leave with a responsible expression. He even tugged at her. "I'm fine. I'll apologize to Almighty Qin properly. You don't have to worry about it. Can't you see that Almighty Qin is so sleepy right now? He doesn't have the energy to care about you at all." Hao Xiuxia looked at Qin Sighting again and felt that it was really the case. Just now, he had subconsciously apologized, but Qin Sighting really did not say a word. He did not even glare at him. He had just scared himself. The little fatty immediately scratched his head in embarrassment. "Then I'll go to the toilet first. I still have to study later." Go on, go on." After he left, Shi Nianj placed the milk that had just been warmed on Qin Sighting's table. As she had returned in a hurry, the milk bottle was still a little hot. After standing here and talking for a long time, her palms were slightly red. She secretly pinched her palm and said, "If you think yogurt is unhealthy and don't like it, forget it. You have to drink hot milk. Drink some now. It'll help you sleep when you go home at night. I specially asked the auntie at the supermarket to heat it up again. Just accept my kindness, good deskmate." Perhaps it was because the word good deskmate carried a hint of praise or derision. Qin Sighting still looked at her coldly. Just as he was about to let her take it away, he saw that her hand was slightly red. It was obvious that she had just been scalded. She even secretly held it up, trying to hide it. He retracted his gaze and looked at the milk on the table. He reached out to take it, opened it and drank it. "Hey, be careful. It's a little hot." The moment Shi Nianj spoke, she saw that he had already finished it. After all, boys and girls were different. Women drank milk slowly in small mouthfuls, while men drank it in one gulp. Although Qin Sighting looked handsome and refined, he was a cold, straight man in his bones. He either didn't drink it, or he drank it in one gulp. Although it was a little hot, It had been a long time since he had brought it from the supermarket. No matter how hot it was, it wouldn't burn his mouth. He expressionlessly threw the empty milk bottle into the trash can 2 meters behind his seat and glanced at her. Is that all right? When she met his gaze, Shirnian's heart began to pound uncontrollably again. Looking at his rosy face that had just drunk the hot milk, she suddenly chuckled and nodded foolishly. Then go to sleep. I'll continue to go to the teacher's side to make up for my lessons. Qin Sighting did not speak. He retracted his gaze and picked up the papers. It was clear that he did not plan on sleeping anymore. So good a look. Cough, it's really good. He was even willing to drink the milk she gave him. Even though he was still so cold and cheerless from beginning to end, at least he had taken a big step forward. Chapter 1441. At noon on Wednesday, Tang Xiao suddenly found Shirnian's class and waited for her outside. He even called a female classmate in to call her out. At that time, Shirnian was about to go to the school cafeteria with Zhao Shaoqing to eat beef noodles. It was mainly because she had never eaten in the cafeteria before. Shaoqing said it was delicious, so Shirnian wanted to go with her to try it. In the end, when she heard that someone was looking for her, and that it was a boy from grade 12, class 2, she knew who it was without guessing. After all, Tang Xiao had called her a few times. First, she had hung up on him. Later, she had blacklisted his phone number. Then do you still want to go to the cafeteria with me? Zhao Shaoqing asked softly from behind. It's almost 12 o'clock. Go eat first. I'll go with you tomorrow. Then do you want me to bring you some other food? No need, no need. I'll think of a way to settle it myself later. Shirnian blinked at her and waved her hand with a smile. After Zhao Shaoqing left, Shirnian turned on her phone to take a look. Indeed, Tang Xiao had sent her a few messages on someone's phone, saying that he wanted to see her. He had sent one more than an hour ago, and another a few minutes ago. She turned to look at Qin Sighting, who was about to go out for lunch. She suddenly raised her hand and tugged at the cuff of his school uniform. Usually, Qin Sighting did not wear his school uniform all day. He usually wore t-shirts and occasionally, he would wear an especially clean white shirt. He had to wear his school uniform every Monday and Wednesday, as well as some public classes. This morning, there was an activity in grade 12, so everyone was dressed neatly in school uniforms. Of course, Qin Sighting was no exception. Suddenly, she tugged at him. Qin Sighting turned back to look at her and saw that she was still holding onto his cuff. He glanced at her coldly. Let go. Well, we've been desk mates for several days. Can you do me a favor? Shirnian looked at him pleadingly. In fact, she didn't have to use such a stupid method, but she really wanted to test if this method was feasible. What if Almighty Qin also hated scumbags? What if he agreed? Qin Sighting glanced at her again and said again, let go. Seeing that he was not even prepared to let her speak, Shirnian paused and could only let go. With his sleeves freed, Qin Sighting turned to walk out. Just as he reached the class door, he saw a boy with his school uniform tied around his waist sticking his head out. When he saw someone else coming out, he asked, Is Shirnian still in your class? Yes, she hasn't left yet. Tang Xiao nodded. It seemed like she was still planning to hide from him. She didn't come out or reply to his messages. It was already so late. How could she not come out for lunch? Ah, you're Tang Xiao from class 2, right? Weren't you? Oh right. I heard that your previous girlfriend was Shirnian, right? It's so strange. Why didn't she get promoted to your class 2? Instead, she came to our class 6. Did the teacher deliberately break them up? A gossipy female student saw Tang Xiao outside the door and asked curiously. Tang Xiao quickly returned a sunny smile and brushed it off. He did not answer directly and continued guarding the door. At this moment, he saw Qin Sighting standing at the door. The moment their eyes met, the smile on Tang Xiao's face gradually disappeared. He had not forgotten the few points that Qin Sighting had deducted from him during the school ethics evaluation last semester. Qin Sighting was the first in the school year. Although he didn't usually care much, the school had long handed many important tasks to him. He didn't care, but when there was really evaluation and deduction of points, he would take the time to look at the forms and lists. With a few circles and crosses, he could almost decide a student's score for the next semester for the school. Just because he had drunk some energy drinks during the 5,000-meter run last semester, which was not considered a stimulant, Qin Sighting had recorded it and deducted his points. The principal had criticized him by name. Tang Xiao would never forget this matter until he graduated. When Qin Sighting walked past, Tang Xiao only glanced at him. There was no longer a smile on his face. Qin Sighting, on the other hand, walked out without looking sideways. He didn't know if he had heard the conversation just now, but he definitely didn't take him seriously. When Shi Nianj walked out, Tang Xiao was about to think of a way to go in to look for her. But the school rules said that she wasn't in his class. If he barged in without a proper reason, he would definitely be given a demerit. When he suddenly saw her come out, he quickly took a step forward and reached out to grab her wrist. Nian Nian. The corner of Shi Nianj's eyes twitched. She pulled her hand out without a trace and glanced at him. Why are you waiting for me here? I've been looking for you for so many days, and you've blacklisted me. You didn't pick up any other calls. I could only wait for you here, Tang Xiao said as he reached out to pull her, but she dodged. Seeing that she wanted to keep a distance from him, Tang Xiao could only put down his hand. His expression was somewhat innocent. I can explain to you what happened a few days ago. At that time, Suichi fainted in class. She was sitting next to me. As a man, I couldn't just sit back and do nothing when I saw a woman fainting, right? I subconsciously picked her up, but I promise I only sent her to the infirmary. I didn't do anything else. Shi Nianj glanced at him, smiled and did not speak. At this moment, two girls passed by in the corridor. When they saw Tang Xiao, they quickly raised their hands to greet him. Tang Xiao. During Suichi's birthday during the summer vacation, the song Deep Embrace you sang with her in the KTV was really nice. When will you have the chance to sing something else? Why didn't you sign up to sing when the school organized the program? It was clearly very nice. Tang Xiao's expression immediately changed. He turned back and glared at them. The two girls looked at him in confusion. When they saw Shi Nianj standing by his side, they immediately replied with an "oh." As though they knew some unspeakable secret, they dragged out their voices and quickly left. Tang Xiao turned back with an ugly expression. He saw that Shi Nianj was still looking at him with her head tilted and a faint smile, as though she did not take this seriously at all. Nian Nian, really you have to give me a chance to explain. Nian Nian, really you have to give me a chance to explain. I've been classmates with Suichi for so long. If I liked her, we would have been together a long time ago. Last summer, it was her birthday, and one of my classmates had a crush on her. But he was too embarrassed to go alone, so he asked me to go with him. That night, I drank a little too much, and when I said I wanted to sing, they pushed me up to sing. I don't know much, and I only know one song that my parents used to sing. I sang it then, and I didn't even notice who was singing with me. Really, you have to believe me. Chapter 1442. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. What's important is that we've already broken up. I didn't quarrel with you or blame you. I just feel that we're not suitable. Is there a problem with breaking up peacefully? Shi Nianj looked at him indifferently. But I don't want to break up. I'm wronged. Tang Xiao anxiously raised his hand to touch the back of his neck. I really like you. That day in the infirmary, it was the doctor-teacher who asked me to help support her. That's why I didn't have time to call you to make things clear. You can't break up with me because of this misunderstanding. It's not fair to me. Tang Xiao, for the sake of our two families, let's be rational. We'll part on good terms. It's best not to make things too awkward. If we break up, so be it. I don't want too much nonsense and entanglement, Shi Nianj said softly. But if you say it's not fair, then when someone filmed you singing a love song with another girl, and posted it on the school forum, everyone said that I relied on the Shi family's wealth to let you be with me. In fact, the two of you are a couple. I'm just an interloper. Is this fair to me? Also, you've been playing football the entire summer vacation. I didn't look for you much. It wasn't easy for us to meet again. On the first day of our date, you carried another girl to the infirmary. You didn't even explain to me patiently on the phone. I waited for you on the field for the entire afternoon. You took care of someone else in the infirmary. Is this fair to me? Tang Xiao looked like he wanted to cry, but he couldn't. He just felt that her attitude and expression explained everything, as though no matter how he explained, it was useless. I didn't make any principled mistakes, did I? Otherwise, don't break up with me. You can just ignore me for the time being. You can watch my performance. When you forgive me, you can reconcile with me. Tang Xiao, you're in your 3rd year of high school. You're an adult, right? I'll be an adult next year. I'm not a child. Why are you playing childish games? After speaking, Shi Nianj was about to leave. Tang Xiao quickly went forward to pull her in another direction. Shi Nianj staggered and almost bumped into him. She restrained her expression and raised her head to look at him. What are you doing? It's lunch break now. I'll take you to lunch. Let's talk while we eat. Tang Xiao held her hand and refused to let go as they walked towards the stairs on the other side. Shi Nianj couldn't shake him off, and she couldn't make a scene in the corridor. Her expression wasn't good as she lowered her voice and said, "Let go, Tang Xiao, let go. If you go back like this, I'll tell my family that you're pestering me. You know that the reason we met is because our parents have business cooperation. You don't want anything to go wrong, do you? If you're sensible enough, then let go of me. We'll go our separate ways in the future and be ordinary friends. At least no one will feel awkward. But I like you. I haven't fallen in love with anyone else. What right do you have to break up with me just like that?" Tang Xiao suddenly stopped and turned around to roar at her. His roar was full of energy, as though he had suffered a huge grievance. Shi Nianj was suddenly speechless. She didn't feel that she was wrong, but could his roar erase his central air conditioning attribute? At this moment, a figure suddenly walked up the stairs. He was tall and thin, and had the unique handsomeness of a young man. He had already taken off his school uniform, and was wearing a white t-shirt. He was holding a bottle of mineral water in his hand. When she suddenly saw Qin Sighting walking up the stairs, Shi Nianj felt her head swell. There were stairs on both sides of the corridor. There were more people on the right side, and it was quieter on the left side. Qin Sighting usually walked on the quiet side, but he didn't expect to be seen here. Furthermore, it hadn't even been 20 minutes since he left the class. They had already broken up. She suddenly fell in love with the male god, and secretly wanted to treat him well. As long as Qin Sighting's brain was fine, he would definitely be able to tell that she liked him. Regardless of whether he cared or not, he would definitely be able to tell. Now that he suddenly saw her and her ex-boyfriend entangled here, who knew what kind of impression she would leave in his heart? In the past, Shi Nianj was a very unscrupulous person. She never cared about other people's gazes or private discussions. This was the first time she was so afraid of being painted with a strange code name in someone else's heart. She quickly pulled her hand out. Tang Xiao also saw Qin Sighting. The two of them were clearly about 1.8 meters tall when they stood together, and their family backgrounds were not bad. However, when he saw Qin Sighting, he instinctively cowered. Perhaps it was because of the trauma caused by the few points he had personally deducted last semester. At this moment, Tang Xiao did not dare to hold Shi Nianj's hand again. He only looked at her, and used his eyes to beg her to go out to eat with him. At the same time, she gave him a chance to explain and perform. Shi Nianj was not in a good mood. After all, he had seen what had happened earlier. When she saw that Qin Sighting had already walked up and brushed past her, she was too embarrassed to call him. Originally, she wanted him to help her get Tang Xiao away. After all, Almighty Qin still had the right to speak in the 3rd year of high school. In the end, he didn't even give her a chance to speak before rejecting her. Now she couldn't open her mouth. She could only wait for him to leave before explaining everything to Tang Xiao. The tall and thin boy walked past just like that. There seemed to be the smell of mint on his body. Tang Xiao looked at Qin Sighting warily. Seeing that he had already taken a few steps with his back facing him, he looked at Shi Nianj and said, "What do you want to eat? It's already so late. You should be hungry, right? You have to eat every meal on time. If you miss a meal, your stomach will hurt. Don't be angry with me. Let's go eat first." A stomach ache is better than nausea. Shi Nianj did not have a good temper to deal with him. She was indeed worried that her stomach would hurt. She picked up her phone and was about to call Zhao Xiaoqing to ask her to pack a lunchbox for her. All of a sudden, a cold voice came from behind. Didn't you say that you don't know the last question of the physics paper? Come here. The voice was Qin Sightings. It was still cold and indifferent, but Shi Nianj was momentarily stunned by his sudden words. When she saw Tang Xiao's stunned expression, she turned her eyes and saw Qin Sightings standing there. He was tall and handsome, looking at her indifferently. Shi Nianj instantly reacted and quickly walked toward him, leaving the central air conditioner student Tang Xiao standing there with his mouth agape. But he did not say a word for a long time. She stepped forward and stood by Qin Sightings' side. She couldn't believe that he would actually help her out. Qin Sighting only glanced at her. He was too stingy to look at Tang Xiao as he walked toward the classroom. Shi Nianj quickly followed obediently. Chapter 1443. When she entered the classroom, Shi Nianj was still beaming with joy. When Qin Sighting sat down, she followed. When she sat down, she whispered, "Thank you." Qin Sighting glanced at her expressionlessly. He retracted his gaze and said calmly, "You don't want to solve the last question of the physics paper? Do you want to solve it now? It's still lunch break." Before she could finish speaking, she saw that he was about to stand up. She subconsciously took out the paper from the desk. Solve it now." She had indeed asked about the physics paper in the morning, but at that time, he had ignored her. Earlier, he could have taken a detour and ignored her. He could have used such a reasonable reason to help her out. If he said he didn't do it on purpose, she wouldn't believe him. However, Qin Sighting clearly had no intention of explaining. He stood up and went to the podium in front of him to take a paper that was the same as the one in her hand. He sat back down and wrote the last question in front of her. He then glanced at her. "Do you understand?" His train of thought to solve the problem was not simple at all. But if she had looked at it seriously from the beginning, she might have understood. However, from the moment he sat down again and leaned his head slightly toward her while writing the question, her mind was filled with his clean and soft short hair, as well as the cold fragrance of mint that belonged to him. There was also the man's clean and fair skin, and his beautiful and well-defined fingers that held the pen. Her mind was filled with questions. Why was he so good-looking? How could he be so good-looking? Qin Sighting looked at her and saw that she clearly didn't understand. Her face was slightly red, as though he didn't need her to speak to know what she was thinking when he was solving the question. He put down the pen coldly. I've read it carefully, but I don't understand it very well. Can you help me explain it verbally?" Seeing that he was angry, Shi Nianj quickly said with a strong desire to live. However, Qin Sighting clearly lost his patience. Seeing that she was being pestered, it was already rare for him to make an exception and meddle in other people's business. Now, he had to make an exception and really help her solve the question. In the end, she was still sitting by the side thinking about it. His brain must have been electrocuted to do such a stupid thing. "Really? As long as you tell me verbally, I will definitely understand." Shi Nianj was afraid that he would really be angry. After so long, she had finally built up a little friendship between deskmates. She did not want it to disappear in the blink of an eye. She reached out to pull his sleeve, but she remembered that he seemed to hate others touching him. Her hand stopped in midair. She did not know whether to touch him or not. Her expression was anxious and regretful. Qin Sighting glanced at her and said expressionlessly, "Solve it yourself first. I want to see where the loopholes and mistakes are." "Okay." Her idol took a step back. Of course, she followed suit and answered the question seriously. This big question was really difficult for Shi Nianj, who had skipped a grade. Her train of thought was wrong. After reading it, Qin Sighting helped her sort out the wrong direction in her train of thought. He then casually circled a few pages in the physics book that she needed to review. When she finally understood this question, there were only 15 minutes left before the end of the lunch break. "You only went out for a while before coming back. Didn't you eat lunch?" Shi Nianj asked as she put away the papers. However, boys did not eat slowly like them. It was not strange for them to finish eating in 10 to 20 minutes. Qin Sighting did not answer. He glanced at her again. "Did you eat?" "No." She felt that her stomach was starting to hurt. But now, even if she wanted to take this opportunity to treat him to a meal, it seemed like there was no time. It was impossible for a top student to skip class and go out to eat with her. Just as she was thinking hard, Zhao Xiaoqing came in with 2 steaming buns in her hands. As she walked, she said, "Aya Nian Nian, I knew you definitely didn't eat. I specially bought buns from the cafeteria." As Zhao Xiaoqing spoke, she quickly placed the buns on Shi Nian's desk. Shi Nian was almost grateful to Zhao Xiaoqing. She gratefully picked up the meat bun and began to nibble on it. As she nibbled, she mumbled, "Xiaoqing, I will never forget your kindness. Don't forget it. Don't hurt just because you have a stomachache." After speaking, Xiaoqing returned to her seat. Later, she recalled something and took out a bottle of orange juice from her pocket. "Do you want to drink this?" Shi Nian nodded and then shook her head. "It's fine. I'll just eat the buns. Drink it yourself." As class was about to start, she ate quickly. She had something in her mouth and could not speak clearly. When she turned back, she met Qin Sighting's disdainful gaze. He also seemed to dislike the smell of buns on her body. He still couldn't be bothered to look at her. His expression was cold and distant, but after all, he had just taught her how to solve the problem. She silently tilted the scales in her heart in the direction of warmth. Although he had a bad temper, he was actually quite warm inside. Seeing the obvious disdain on his cold expression, Shi Nian coughed. Shi Nian quickly finished the remaining half of the bun in a few bites. Thankfully, the bun was not big. Otherwise, with her appetite, she might not be able to finish 2 buns. It was probably because her male god was right by her side that she really didn't want to appear wasteful. However, even if it was 2 small buns, she ate them in a hurry, and in the end, she was really stuffed. That afternoon, Shi Nian did not feel so hungry that her stomach hurt. She was so full that her stomach hurt. Thankfully, the pain was not severe, and it did not show on her face. After holding on for a while, it no longer hurt. Otherwise, she would have really embarrassed herself. On Friday night, Uncle Qin would usually bring her back to the Shi family at this time. Today was different. He was bringing her to her new home. When the car arrived at a villa, she looked at the surrounding villa area in surprise. "There's such a luxurious area near High City First High School? I thought this area was filled with apartments for students." Uncle Qin smiled. "After all, it's a high school in the province. There are many wealthy areas nearby. This villa is only 10 minutes away from the school. It's very convenient. I remember I chose a duplex apartment. It's not an apartment, it's a duplex villa." At that time, she had only seen some of the interior decorations and did not pay attention to anything else. She did not expect it to be a villa. Why did she live in such a big villa alone? Chapter 1444. This villa was just built last year. At that time, the construction company had a lot of investments from the 4 big families in High City. They were quite rich, so they booked this land to build a villa. The original owner of the villa you chose was one of the developers. However, he had too many properties under his name, so he sold it. The decoration is indeed not bad. No one has lived in it before. I've also hired someone to test it. The air humidity and other aspects are up to standard. You can live in it with peace of mind. After Uncle Qin finished speaking, he drove the car to the courtyard of the villa. Shi Nian wouldn't even mind sleeping on the foldable bed in the laboratory with her grandfather. She would never be picky about these external things. However, Uncle Qin had the mission to take care of her after all. He was always so careful and serious. She did not say much and only nodded. She glanced at the villa inside. Not bad. It's not as exaggerated and luxurious as the Shi families. The small villa is quite exquisite. Miss, it's because you have good taste. After all, you chose it yourself. Shi Nian smiled. All right, I'll go down and take a look. She only went in to take a look before putting down her bag. Let's do it here. There's no need to waste time. I'm sure it's not too far from the school. Then Auntie Xiang and I will come here often to take care of you. There's no need. Just ask Auntie Xiang to come once a week. I'll take a taxi to school myself. How can that work? Why not? Can you treat me as a child for the rest of my life? In another year, I'll be an adult. It's time for me to learn to be independent. Shirniange looked around as she spoke. At the same time, she looked out. It was already evening, and the sky was much darker. There didn't seem to be many people living in the surrounding villas. It was dark and very quiet. Are there very few people living here? It's not bad. It's almost half occupied. However, the two buildings opposite seem to be empty and unsold. Or perhaps no one moved in after they were sold. Shirniange nodded and retracted her gaze to continue touring her new house. Then, she began the sad homework and revision life of a third-year high school student. On the first day in the new house, she spent it in a sea of books. On Monday, Auntie Xiang went to Li Shui Villa to personally make a lot of walnut cakes for her. She said that she wanted her to bring them to school for her classmates to eat. When Shirniange came to school with a large and exquisite bag, she attracted the attention of many people. They were all curious about what good things this legendary student, who was also the eldest daughter of the Shir family, had brought. Why was it such an exaggerated big bag? Shirniange did not expect it to be so big. Along the way, she rushed to the class. After entering, she did not say a word, and began to distribute the items. Thankfully, things like walnut cakes were divided. There were more than 50 students in this class, and each person could get about 3 pieces on average. She did not wait for everyone to arrive, and placed some on each table. Nian Nian! Zhao Xiaoqing waved at her from her seat. Shirniange smiled at her, and continued to split the items. As she did so, she said, "Why are you here so early? I'm on duty today." As Zhao Xiaoqing spoke, she came over to help her distribute. As she did so, she praised her for quickly becoming familiar with her classmates. She praised Shirniange for her good personality, and said that she was always too shy and would blush when talking to others. Shirniange smiled and chatted with her for a while. She then accompanied Zhao Xiaoqing to wipe the floor. After tidying up, almost everyone had arrived. The two of them returned to their seats. Shirniange casually explained the matter of the walnut cakes to everyone. She only said that it was made by her relatives, and was very delicious. She could not finish it herself, so she distributed it to everyone. Everyone was quite happy. However, Shirniange was unhappy today. She had been looking at the 3 pieces of walnut cakes on her deskmate's table for the entire morning. Zhao Xiaoqing gently poked her back with a pen and whispered, "Come back to your senses. Don't be in a daze. Why are you looking to the side?" Shirniange sat up straight again, and raised her head to look at the teacher and the blackboard. However, her heart felt empty. She did not know that Qin Sighting would not come today. She had thought that after the weekend, she would be able to sit with her male god again on Monday. However, he was not here today. Hao Xiuxia said that there was a physics competition in the province today. Almighty Qin was representing the entire province, where High City was located. His competitors were all famous top students in the country. The competition would take at least 3 to 4 days. He would definitely not be here for the next few days. It had been hard on Shirniange for the past 3 to 4 days. Qin Sighting was the reason why she could support herself to come to school with hope every day. As long as she thought of a tall, fair, good-looking, and top student sitting by her side, she would be filled with motivation. No matter how difficult the lessons were, she would be willing to make up for it. However, he was not around these few days. Even Zhao Xiaoqing and Hao Xiuxia realized that in the past few days, when Qin Sighting was not around, Shirniange was especially listless. Even when the teacher asked her to go to the office to make up for the lesson, she had a sad expression on her face. She was not as motivated as usual. She finally made it to Tuesday afternoon's physical education class. For 2 whole days, Shirniange, who did not have a male god sitting beside her, was like a person who had just been sucked away by a demon. She sat there listlessly and wrote notes. As the name suggested, physical education class was a free activity class. Only a small number of people really went out to class. Most of them found opportunities to stroll in the classroom or on the field. Shirniange was called out by Zhao Xiaoqing to go to the toilet. When she turned her head on the path outside the toilet, she saw that class 3-2 was also having physical education class. Suichi was walking over with another girl, When she saw Shirniange only glanced in her direction casually. However, Suichi turned her head away and pulled the girl beside her to quickly walk around her. Shirniange raised her brows. She did not understand why she had to take a detour. She was not interested in the matter between Suichi and Tang Xiao, nor did she care about Tang Xiao's explanation. However, Suichi looked like she minded something. It was impossible for her to say that she did not have any other thoughts. Only she knew if she had a guilty conscience. Shirniange could not be bothered with her, and continued to wait for Zhao Xiaoqing. When they came out, the two of them left the toilet and walked along the lush path in front of them. The two girls chatted as they walked. Although Zhao Xiaoqing was shy, she was actually very gentle and concerned about her friends. She was also very observant. She asked, "Do you like Almighty Qin?" That's right. It was originally a private discussion between the two girls about whether they liked each other or not. However, Shirniange's answer was too straightforward and calm, leaving Zhao Xiaoqing stunned for a moment. Chapter 1445. Zhao Xiaoqing said in surprise. When you were with Tang Xiao, didn't you never hide it? That's why many people know. There's nothing to hide. At our age, it's normal for us to like anyone. Do your parents know? I know. They are more open-minded about my matters, including if I want to have a boyfriend and have someone I like, I can tell them. Wow, then your parents are so nice. Tang Xiao's parents have some business dealings with my parents, but we haven't spent much time together. It's already over. Why? Many people know that you dated Tang Xiao in the past. As for Almighty Qin, it doesn't matter if he knows or not, because I feel that he doesn't seem to be interested in what others say. However, it's not good for you to have such rumors. As Zhao Xiaoqing spoke, she turned back to look in the direction of the toilet. She then leaned close to her ear and said, I didn't remember this, but I remembered when I saw Suichi from class 2. What rumors? Shirniange was slightly surprised. Suichi told the girls in her class that it's because your family background is too good and your personality is too strong. You suppress Tang Xiao everywhere. Tang Xiao doesn't like your personality and gradually ignores you. Then, because he brought her to the infirmary once, you fell out with Tang Xiao. You were jealous and split up, saying that she was innocent or something. Hearing this, Shirniange did not say anything. She stood where she was and heard footsteps behind her. She turned back and saw that Suichi and another girl had already come out together. Seeing that they had not gone far, Suichi's expression paused for a moment. She still wanted to take a detour. This time, Shirniange walked toward her and blocked her path in front of Suichi. She looked at her but did not speak. Suichi's expression instantly turned flustered. What are you doing? Zhao Xiaoqing thought that something was going to happen. She rushed over to pull Shirniange, only to see that she was standing there motionless with an unknown smile on her lips. When she saw Shirniange raise her hand, Zhao Xiaoqing quickly closed her eyes. In the end, she did not hear her hit anyone. When she opened her eyes again, she saw Shirniange plucking a small leaf from Suichi's head. She then turned to look at the lush path around her. Although it's autumn, High City hasn't reached the point where there are fallen leaves everywhere. It's really not easy for this leaf to fall on your head. Suichi's expression froze when she raised her hand towards her, and she still hadn't come back to her senses. Shirniange casually patted the fallen leaves on her hand and glanced at her. If you're not feeling well, don't come out and walk around. The wind has been quite strong these few days. Suichi stared at her blankly for a long time, and the girl next to her also tugged at her arm nervously. The two of them hurried away with ugly expressions on their faces. After he walked away, Zhao Xiaoqing quickly came over. You scared me to death. I thought you were going to hit her. Why would I hit her? To deal with such a person, hitting her is helping her. Shirniange looked indifferent. She's afraid of me, so she only dares to gossip behind her back to clear her name of stealing someone else's boyfriend. Anyway, I don't have any feelings for Tang Xiao. She can do whatever she wants as long as she doesn't touch my bottom line. Zhao Xiaoqing looked at her in confusion. Seeing her terrified and confused expression, Shirniange really wanted to pinch her face, but she held back. Let's go back to the classroom. Sure Nianj waited for several days, and finally saw Qin Sighting return on Thursday morning. The tall and thin boy held a black shoulder bag in one hand, and sat expressionlessly by her side. Sure Nianj's heart, which she thought would be very calm, began to beat wildly for a while. Her breathing quickened. After pondering for a while, she whispered to him, "You're back from the competition?" Qin Sighting glanced at her and did not answer. "Then what should we do if you haven't come to class for the past few days? Do you need notes?" When she saw the teacher enter, she lowered her voice and quickly took out her class notes to show him. In the end, she only opened the notes and pushed them onto his desk. Qin Sighting glanced at her notes indifferently. His originally expressionless face became even more indifferent. It seemed like he had been despised. Sure Nianj's handwriting was considered beautiful. Her handwriting was graceful and neat, but her class notes were written very much like a primary school student's. It could be considered to have exposed the gap between her learning and his in every class. "Ahem. If you don't need my notes, I'll borrow one from the class monitor." "No need." Qin Sighting retracted his light and said indifferently. "Then what about the classes you missed?" Qin Sighting was used to being silent. He rarely explained anything to others, especially girls. He then looked at Sure Nianj, whose eyes had been shining ever since he came back today, as though she had waited for some treasure. For some reason, he was surprised by her unabated enthusiasm. "I've already read this week's classes over the weekend." Qin Sighting lowered his head and pushed her notes back. The moment he lowered his head, he seemed to blink. The moment he lowered his head and blinked, Sure Nianj felt as though she had been shot in the chest. Ah, ah, ah. She felt as though every time she looked at him like this, she would roar in her heart. How can he be so good-looking? She could not come back to her senses for a moment. She reached out to take the notes back, but suddenly recalled that when he pushed the notes back, his hand seemed to have touched her notebook. In an instant, Sure Nianj seemed to have held something very sacred and quickly and carefully kept it. "You actually read it yourself," she muttered with a look of admiration. "You don't need the teacher to teach you in class. You can just read it yourself. Can you really understand it?" Qin Sighting rarely glanced at her. That gaze was clearly saying, "Do you think I have the same IQ as you?" Although there was nothing wrong with his gaze, and it was even a little ambiguous, Sure Nianj felt very disappointed. All sorts of pink bubbles began to appear in her heart. In the past, he would not even bother with her words. Even though he was still cold and silent, he was at least used to her as his deskmate. Occasionally, he would even throw her a look. As long as she persevered a little longer, he would become more and more accustomed to her existence. In the future, he might really become good friends with her. As a male god, she liked him, but she did not dare to ask for too much. She did not dare to blaspheme him mentally. However, if they could be friends, they could often talk and chat in the future. If he could smile at her, she would probably ascend to the heavens. Chapter 1446. Sure Nianj thought that Qin Sighting was probably afraid that she would go to heaven, so he wouldn't smile at her. Furthermore, he didn't seem to smile much. When he spoke to the teacher, his expression was also indifferent. After class, she still wanted to talk to Qin Sighting, who she hadn't seen for days, but he stood up and left. It was still morning. There was still a whole day. It didn't matter. In the end, for the entire morning, he listened quietly in class. After class, he left. Listening to the discussions of the other students in class, he seemed to have gone to the principal's office. It should be about the competition that he needed to discuss with the principal and the others. At noon, Sure Nianj still wanted to say something, but Hao Xiuxia's face was pale as he lay on the table and hummed because he had eaten too much. Sure Nianj turned back and saw that Zhao Xiaoqing had gone out to buy food. She was not around, so she could only send him to the infirmary with the class monitor. The class monitor was in charge of supporting him, and she helped carry his things. As she walked, she asked him what he had eaten in the morning. After asking, she found out that this little fatty had eaten 6 meat buns in one go before coming to school in the morning. In the morning, he felt uncomfortable in his stomach. He thought it was just flatulence, so he specially bought 2 bottles of Sprite to drink. He wanted to burp to release his breath. And then his stomach was full for the entire morning. Earlier, he really couldn't take it anymore. He went to the toilet to vomit once in the previous class, but now, he still wanted to poop and vomit. He felt like he would collapse at any moment. Even though Nianj had not officially studied medicine, she knew that this was food accumulation. She helplessly went to the infirmary and asked the class monitor to take care of him. She went to look for the infirmary teacher, who was eating in the office. After explaining the situation, the teacher came over to take a look and confirmed that it was indeed food accumulation. He needed to rest in bed and take medicine. If it was too serious, he might have to go to the small hospital outside the school for an injection. The class monitor felt that there was no need for Nianj, a girl, to follow, so he volunteered to go and let her return to class first. Nianj helped send him to the hospital outside the school and then returned. When she walked back to the school gate, she suddenly saw a familiar figure from the corner of her eye. She turned around and saw Qin Sighting walking out of the school gate. Right now, he was not wearing his school uniform, and there was no one by his side. She only knew that he seemed to have a good relationship with a brother in school, but they were not in the same class. Furthermore, he was usually too busy and did not have time to gather in school. She was looking in his direction. Qin Sighting had already walked to the parking lot outside the school. She observed from afar and saw that there seemed to be a black car parked there. After he walked over, someone came down to open the car door and respectfully invited him in. After he got in, the car door closed and he disappeared. It was probably the Qin family's car. He parked it in a corner of the parking lot. He just waited there and didn't go into the school to alert the teachers and students. He was very low-key. Nianj recalled how Xiosha's pale and pained expression earlier. Although the teacher had prescribed a digestive tablet for him, it was clearly still too uncomfortable. She glanced in the direction of the car and turned to enter the pharmacy to see if there were any other medicines that could relieve the pain of indigestion. There were many kinds of Jianwei Shaosher tablets in the pharmacy. She knew about the drugs and some scientific names. After standing in front of a row of drugs for more than 10 minutes, she was about to pick up a drug from a well-known pharmaceutical factory when another person came into the pharmacy. Is there any medicine that can relieve cholecystitis? Nianj did not turn back. After all, he was not asking her. However, when she turned around, she suddenly saw the person who had just entered in a small mirror in the middle of the pharmacy. She immediately turned back to look at him. Wasn't this the person who had helped Qin Sighting drive in the parking lot? From his clothes, he should be the Qin family's driver or butler. Cholecystitis? Is it suddenly very painful? The person at the pharmacy counter asked. Yes. Our madam was in the car when her cholecystitis suddenly flared up. Her face turned pale, and she said she was dizzy. Then her stomach and gallbladder felt uncomfortable. The pain was very serious. After Nianj heard this, she did not speak, because she heard him say madam. Could it be that there was someone else in the car? Qin Sighting's mother? Wow! She was so envious of people who could see their parents often. She had thought that someone like Qin Sighting, who was cold and unsociable, was like her, who often did not have parents by her side. In the end, Mrs. Qin would come to school to visit him. She was really envious. The driver left in a hurry after buying the medicine. Earlier, Nianj had seen the shop assistant in the pharmacy take out the most expensive medicine on the counter and give it to him. She guessed that he had heard about the car, or the madam, and felt that the other party was rich. Furthermore, in a pharmacy, no matter how effective the medicine was, as long as it was written on it, as long as the price was expensive and the commission was high, they would definitely take out the expensive ones to sell. Nianj did not say anything. She only placed the medicine she had chosen on the counter. She then turned around and bent down to pick up the second last row of medicine. She brought it over to pay the bill. The shop assistant saw the medicine she was holding and asked curiously, "Didn't you say you were buying medicine for your classmate? Your classmate has cholecystitis at such a young age?" Nianj did not answer. After paying, she went out. She first sent the medicine to Xiosha and the class monitor, before walking to the parking lot to the black RV. She stood there for a while and did not suddenly knock on the car door. The driver recognized her and rolled down the window to look at her. "Little girl, you've been looking in this way. Is something the matter? I think I saw you at the pharmacy earlier." Shirnianj then walked over. "Uncle, I'm Chin Sighting's classmate. Just now, I heard that someone here seems to have a serious case of cholecystitis. I've learned some medical and pharmacology from grandfather. The box of medicine you bought earlier wasn't very effective, so I bought this and sent it over." Just as she finished speaking, the car door behind her opened. Chin Sighting and a well-maintained middle-aged woman were sitting in the back. Chin Sighting glanced at her. It was clear that he could not understand why she was here and how she knew he was here. "I saw you outside the school gate just now. How Xiosha wasn't feeling well, so I went to the pharmacy to buy medicine for him." I heard what the driver said when he went to the pharmacy to buy medicine and saw that the medicine he took wasn't very effective, so I couldn't help but buy something else. Seeing that Chin Sighting's expression was not very good, Shirnianj realized that the person in the car was not his mother. Then, he realized that he was being a busybody to the point that he was being annoying. Seeing his unhappy expression, she hurriedly said, "Did I disturb you? I just can't stand the way the people at the pharmacy are doing things. I'll put the medicine down and leave." As she spoke, she quickly handed the medicine to the driver. The driver received it warmly and even thanked her. Before Shirnianj could reply, Chin Sighting had already gotten out of the car. He did not say anything more to the middle-aged woman in the car. He suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist. Before she could react, he brought her away. Chapter 1447. Shirnianj felt a very clean and warm feeling on her wrist. The cold, tall, and thin boy was almost a head taller than her. She was clearly 1.66 meters tall. But Chin Sighting looked like he was really more than 1.85 meters tall. Clearly, she had only taken a quick glance at him. Now that she was pulled away by him and followed behind him, she realized that he was really tall. After being pulled away, she only had time to turn back to look in the direction of the driver. She did not speak again. She was brought by the strong force on her wrist to the walking path, under the high wall outside the school. There were students from other classes coming and going on both sides. They seemed to have seen that she was holding Chin Sighting's hand. They had already sent many curious, surprised and gossipy gazes over. Chin Sighting retracted his hand and looked at her indifferently. "What exactly do you want?" At this moment, he maintained a distance of 2 or 3 people from her, as though the person who had led her here was not him. Shirnianj still felt that her wrist was warm. This warmth spread all the way to the bottom of her heart. She inadvertently touched her wrist again and raised her eyes to meet his cold gaze. Was the person in the car earlier an auntie? Chin Sighting glanced at her coldly. "Yes. I really just happened to see you in that car and saw Uncle Driver buy medicine. You know why I skipped a grade to year 3? I know pharmacology. I was afraid that if Auntie took that medicine, it wouldn't have any effect and would hurt even more. So I bought the medicine and sent it over. I don't have any other intentions. If my actions have disturbed you, I apologize. I won't do it again." Shirnianj now felt that although she had good intentions, she was indeed too abrupt. She also regretted her rashness. Chin Sighting took out a black wallet. "How much is the medicine?" The sincere apology and smile on Shirnianj's face instantly disappeared. He was drawing a clear line between them. He did not intend to owe her a single cent. "There's no need. I even dirtied your shirt last time. Compared to your shirt, the money for my small box of medicine shouldn't be much." Chin Sighting paused as though he had recalled the matter of the shirt because of her words. He placed the wallet back and said lightly, "All right, we're even." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He had no intention of continuing to speak with her. "Hey, hello. We've been deskmates for a long time. You don't have to keep pushing me away, do you? We're all classmates, and we don't have any goals. Can't we just be friends?" Shirnianj quickly followed him without hesitation. She walked quickly behind the boy and said, "Communicating normally once in a while is better than looking at each other coldly every day, right?" Chin Sighting did not turn back. Nianj continued to follow unwillingly until they reached the school gate. The students who had bought lunch nearby all looked in their direction. Qin Sighting's name was already very famous in this school. Other than her, who used to be a little fool who didn't care about the outside world, there was really no one who didn't know him. Nianj was also famous because of this special case of skipping a grade. The two of them walked outside the school gates one after another, inevitably attracting attention. He still did not turn back, as though he did not hear at all. Nianj had no choice but to quickly step forward to hold his arm. She almost held onto his arm and tugged at him forcefully. If you really want to be even, that's fine. Let's not talk about the money, but I missed my lunch break to help Auntie buy medicine. It's almost time for class, and I haven't eaten yet. You owe me a meal. Find a chance to return it. Qin Sighting paused and turned to look at her as though she was crazy. He then looked at her hand that was holding his arm. He did not respond to her suggestion, and his eyes were filled with displeasure. His voice was cold as the autumn night. Let go. She did not let go, but her desire to live was strong. How about this? Forget about treating me to a meal. My requirements aren't that harsh. You know that I skipped a grade. I've fallen behind in many of my sophomore classes. No matter how much time the teacher takes to help me with my tutoring, I still fall behind a lot. It's very difficult for me to study now. I'll go to the school library in the afternoon. Come with me. Qin Sighting's brows were already filled with impatience. He looked at her coldly and did not speak. Seeing that he had no intention of leaving immediately, Nianj slowly retracted her hand. However, she still carefully tugged on his sleeve. Based on your experience, go to the library and help me find a book that's suitable for me to read right now. It's fine as long as it's a book that can help me quickly make up for my lessons. I swear I won't take up more than half an hour of your time. Just go during self-study in the afternoon, okay? He still did not speak. She gently tugged on his sleeve again. 15 minutes is fine. You can help me find a few books and leave immediately. There's no need for you to accompany me there. Isn't that enough? After all, we're classmates and deskmates. Even without today's incident, you should help me on account of our deskmates' friendship. Otherwise, you're the top student in the school year, and you're sitting next to a flunky who hasn't even finished her second-year classes. It won't be good for you. You can change your seat. After saying that, he pulled out his sleeve and left without anyone noticing. Nianj, this kind of person who was unmoved by force or persuasion was really difficult to get along with. She recalled her teacher's words again. How long could he last? She looked at the boy straight and cold back and took a deep breath. Forget it. He was so handsome. So what if he had a little personality? So what if he was a little cold? Aloofness was the standard of a male god. Forgive him and forgive him. In the afternoon during self-study time, it was the teacher who suggested that Nianj go to the school library to find books to read. She really had to go. She turned back and saw that Hao Xiuxi's seat was empty. He was still lying in the small hospital and had yet to return. Zhao Xiaoqing was buried in her weekend homework alone, so she couldn't disturb her. She could only go by herself. The school library wasn't small, and it wasn't easy to find books. She asked the librarian for the location of some books related to Year 2's curriculum. When she went over, she saw a few tall bookshelves and rows upon rows of thousands, or even tens of thousands of books. Her head swelled. Most importantly, the bookshelves were too high. She borrowed a small ladder from the librarian and climbed up and down the bookshelves. After searching for a long time, she still couldn't figure out which type of book was most suitable for her. On the surface, the introductions and covers of the books were similar, but the inside was actually different. It was really difficult to find. Chapter 1448. Nianj carried the ladder to the other side and saw that there was a slightly higher position. She placed the ladder by the side and tiptoed to stretch her arms. She couldn't reach it, so she could only turn back to take the ladder. Suddenly, someone stood beside her. She turned around and saw that the book she had been tiptoeing for a long time had suddenly been handed to her. She looked up and saw Qin Sighting. Qin Sighting? She was surprised and blinked her eyes. After confirming that the person in front of her was indeed Qin Sighting, who had rejected her in the afternoon, she suddenly reacted and quickly reached out to take it. "Thank you." The tall and thin man turned back indifferently and took out another book from the bookshelf. After flipping through a few pages, he handed the book to her. "Take it." Oh. Shirnianj was still in a daze and instinctively took it. Seeing her silly expression, Qin Sighting only glanced at her and turned to go to the other bookshelves. Shirnianj quickly followed him and found that many of the books that she often used did not need to climb so high. They were all at the bottom, where it was easy to reach. She followed him all the way and did not ask anything. She did not speak much and took the books he gave her. She followed him with a serious and obedient expression. In the end, there were already 6 or 7 books in her arms. Seeing that she could not carry them anymore, Qin Sighting turned back to look at her. Shirnianj quickly put on a smile. Her eyes curved into crescents. "Anything else?" It was obvious that she could no longer carry them. Qin Sighting stood in place and did not speak. He casually picked up a book related to high school physics from the bookshelf and began reading. It seemed like this book had nothing to do with her, but after all, he was here. Shirnianj waited patiently by the side. After a while, her hands were trembling as she held the book. As though he did not see it, Qin Sighting put the book back and picked up another to read. Shirnianj took a deep breath and continued to wait with a smile. After waiting for a few more minutes, she really could not carry it anymore. There were so many books that added up to at least 10 kilograms. She had been holding them for more than half an hour. Qin. The name was at the tip of her tongue, but she suddenly did not know how to call him. It seemed like everyone was used to calling him Almighty Qin, although he did not pay much attention to this title. The girls in the first and second year would discuss Senior Qin with red faces. As for her, it seemed like she could call him Senior, but it did not seem appropriate. She also felt awkward calling him Almighty Qin. How about calling him deskmate? It seemed too childish. Just as she was thinking, the boy's cold and clear voice sounded. "Qin Sighting." She abruptly came back to her senses and looked at him. She saw that he was still standing by the bookshelf, reading a Year 3 physics book. His eyelids did not even lift, but the voice just now was definitely directed at her. She quickly said, "Qin Sighting, do I have enough books?" The boy standing by the bookshelf did not answer, as though he did not hear her. After about 2 minutes, Shirnianj planned to place the book on the table at the back. Just as she took half a step back, Qin Sighting closed the book in his hand and glanced at her indifferently. She immediately stopped in her tracks. "Why are you sitting next to me?" he asked. Shirnianj looked at him. "Because your grades are good. You're the top student in the school year. I jumped a grade from the second year of high school and need a top student by my side to help me. Just like now, when I don't know what to read, you'll help me look for it. This way, my grades will definitely be fine." Qin Sighting looked at her coldly. It was clear that he had no patience for her nonsense. She swallowed and could only cough. "Because you're good-looking." The tall, skinny boy raised his brows and looked at her again. Shirnianj's expression was a little timid, but there was a hint of calmness in her timidity. "Everyone loves beauty. Who doesn't like good-looking people, don't you think? When I'm too sleepy or bored in class, I just need to turn to look at you, and I'll immediately be energized." Qin Sighting looked at her indifferently and did not speak. Shirnianj did not know if she was being rude, but he did not like to hear lies. To be honest, if he felt that there was a problem, he could only blame himself for being too difficult to please. He placed the book back on the bookshelf and walked up to her expressionlessly. He picked up the 5 books in her hand and left only one in her hand. He turned to walk out. "Let's go." Shirnianj looked at the thinnest book in her hand and then at the especially thick books in his hand. Her lips curved up and she quickly followed. Just as the two of them were about to walk out of the bookshelf, the bucket of water by the feet of an auntie, who was cleaning in the library, suddenly flipped over and dripped all over the ground. The librarians by the side saw it and rushed over in fright when they saw that the books at the bottom of the bookshelf were about to be wet. In the end, because they were too anxious when they rushed over, They did not notice that there were two students under the bookshelf. They bumped into the ladder that Nianj had placed in front of them, and the ladder fell toward Qin Sighting. Qin Sighting turned to see it. Just as he was about to dodge, he heard a low cry from behind. "Be careful!" In the next moment, just as he was about to dodge to the side, Nianj hugged him from behind and quickly pushed him under the bookshelf. The girl who was a head shorter than him decisively pounced in front of him and pressed him against the bookshelf in a protective manner. The ladder fell by their feet, making a moderate sound. The librarian was so frightened that he rushed over to support the ladder, complaining that the cleaning auntie was so careless. Qin Sighting and Nianj, who were under the bookshelf, were silent. Nianj, who realized that she had hugged her male god, and even pushed him against the wall. Qin Sighting, who realized that not only had he been pressed against the bookshelf by a girl in a protective manner, but the girl's entire body, including her chest, was pressed against him. In the eyes of others, the two of them looked like they were secretly hugging in the library. When the librarian picked up the ladder, she glanced over and left. She clicked her tongue and whispered to the auntie beside her. Young people nowadays, they're only in their 3rd year of high school, and they're already secretly dating. They actually came to the library for a secret date. Nianj's reaction was very fast earlier, but now, her reaction was completely sluggish. Especially when she heard the auntie's whispered words. Her face turned red without giving her any face. She felt the heat extend to her ears. Liking a male god was a feeling. This feeling of hugging a male god was very different. Chapter 1449. She raised her head awkwardly and saw Qin Sighting standing expressionlessly under the bookshelf. His expression was still indifferent. "Can you let go?" Nianj looked down and saw that her hand was still pressed against Qin Sighting's arm. It could be seen how domineering she was when she suddenly pounced on him and pressed him under the bookshelf. She quickly retracted her hand and took a big step back. "I saw that the ladder almost hit you so." Qin Sighting did not speak, nor did he explain if he could avoid the ladder faster than her. He took the 5 books in his hand and left. Under the gazes of the librarians, Nianj could only lower her brows and follow him out. Behind her the aunties whispered, "But this pair is quite beautiful. The man is handsome, and the woman is beautiful. But friends of this age probably won't have a chance to be together when they grow up. What a pity." Nianj pretended not to hear and jogged to keep up with Qin Sighting. He was tall and had long legs. If she wanted to catch up to him, she really had to run. Just as she was about to return to class for self-study, the form teacher, Teacher Zhao, happened to walk out of the office. When he saw Nianj walking back with Qin Sighting, his gaze was clearly surprised. Qin Sighting saw the teacher and did not say anything. Nianj was afraid that the teacher would misunderstand, so she quickly said, "Teacher, the books you asked me to find, student Qin accompanied me to the library to help me find them. These are the books." What surprised Teacher Zhao was that not only did Qin Sighting return with her, but he also seemed to have accompanied her to the library. When did this kid learn to help others? He had never seen such a scene in 3 years. "It's good that you found them. It's self-study time now. Follow me to the office to continue your lessons." "All right." Nianj responded and quickly took the book from Qin Sighting's hand. At the same time, she smiled at him to express her gratitude. However, Qin Sighting acted as though he did not see it, and returned to the classroom indifferently, as though nothing had happened. Nianj did not dare to look at him again. She turned around and carried the book to the teacher's side. When she was at the teacher's place, she was thinking that since Qin Sighting had helped her find the books, should she treat him to a meal? However, it seemed like the reason why he came to help her find the book was because she said that he owed her a favor. He probably wanted to clear the debt completely. Even if she offered to treat him to a meal, he probably wouldn't go. Just like that, she spent the self-study period with the teacher, hesitating whether she should ask him or not. Finally, the teacher let her go and allowed her to return to the classroom. She ran back with a few books, only to see that the seat next to her was empty. Zhao Shaoqing waved at her. Nianj walked over and put the book down. She glanced at the seat next to her. Qin Sighting's shoulder bag was not there. Nian Nian, come back to your senses. Stop looking, stop looking. Almighty Qin left long ago. He left long ago. Didn't you just finish studying? I don't know. He should have something to do in the afternoon. It should be more than an hour ago. He left after answering a phone call. Zhao Xiaoqing thought back and said, however, Almighty Qin usually doesn't skip classes, unless there's an open competition or activity in the school that he has to participate in. There should really be something going on this afternoon. More than an hour ago. That was after accompanying her back from the library. She recalled that his expression was not good when he was in the car at noon. Could it be that something really happened? He was no longer in school, so why was she still thinking so much? The Qin Corporation was big, and didn't need a little girl like her to worry about it. In short, she really couldn't treat him to a meal. Zhao Xiaoqing asked her to go to the side street near the school to buy clothes tonight. Sure, Nianj lived alone now. Since she had nothing to do, she agreed. The two of them walked out of the school gate, and were about to turn right when a black Cadillac suddenly drove over and stopped in front of them. Zhao Xiaoqing was stunned, but the moment the car stopped in front of her, Sure Nianj paused. She looked up and saw the smiling face inside when the car window rolled down. Nian Nian, I'm your Uncle Tang. I haven't seen you for a long time after the Spring Festival. Coincidentally, we came to school to visit that brat, Tang Xiao, on the way today. We wanted to see you as well. After all, your parents aren't in the country right now, and there's no adult by your side to take care of you. If there's anything, you have to tell me. Sure Nianj's expression did not change. Only the corners of her lips curved into a polite smile. But the smile did not reach her eyes. Hello, Uncle Tang. Hey, good child, have you eaten tonight? When Tang Xiao comes out, Uncle will treat the two of you to dinner. There's no need. I have an appointment with my classmates. Zhao Xiaoqing happened to be holding her hand and walking with her. Sure Nianj turned to look at her. We still have to go shopping, right? Zhao Xiaoqing didn't understand what was going on, but from Sure Nianj's eyes, she could tell that she didn't want to go with this Uncle Tang. She immediately said, yes, didn't you say that the clothes I bought aren't suitable for me, and that you want to help me choose? In a few days, there will be supplementary lessons at night. If you miss today, you won't have time to go again. Sure Nianj turned to look at Tang Xiao's father in the car. Uncle Tang, I'm really sorry. Next time, when my parents return from abroad, if they ask me to go with them for dinner, I'll definitely be there. Tang Xiao's father also smiled. Is that so? It's fine. You have to eat first when you go shopping, right? Tang Xiao is about to come out. Why don't I treat the few of you, including your little classmate, to a meal? You can go shopping after eating, or I can send you there. There's really no need, Uncle Tang. Besides, at Tang Xiao's and my age, it's more important to consider our studies. Tang Xiao's father was an old man in the business world in his 40s or 50s. He was also the director of a large company. He did not expect that a 17 or 18-year-old girl would block his words. However, after all, the Tang family and the Sure family were still working together. He had always been afraid that something would go wrong. As expected, that brat Tang Xiao still failed to stabilize this young lady. They had just become boyfriend and girlfriend, but they suddenly broke up without even a splash. Are we still leaving? Zhao Xiaoqing urged anxiously. Let's go now. Sure Nianj said and smiled politely at the man in the car. Uncle will be leaving first. Without waiting for Tang Xiao's father to say anything, she pulled Zhao Xiaoqing into the street on the right side of the school. Chapter 1450. On the side street, Zhao Xiaoqing tried on 2 student dresses. She liked them both very much, but she was conflicted about which color to choose. Sure Nianj helped her look at them for a long time and finally suggested that she choose the light purple one. Although Zhao Xiaoqing usually wore a pair of glasses and looked quiet and obedient, she was very fair and did not choose the color of her clothes. This kind of light purple dress did not look good on anyone with slightly darker skin, but she could handle it. After the two of them bought clothes, they went to the side to look at the snacks. Zhao Xiaoqing was addicted to the barbecue on the street. Her family belonged to a moderately well-off family. She had normal pocket money and would not be short of money, but she was not the kind of rich and noble who could casually spend money. Therefore, even if she saw the mutton skewers she liked, she could only buy 2, but she would give Shirniange 1 to eat together. Every time Shirniange said that she wanted to treat her, Zhao Xiaoqing would not agree. She firmly said that even if she became friends with the princess, she could not let the princess use money to step on her head. No matter what, they had to maintain equality. Otherwise, if one side paid too much for a long time, the friendship would definitely tilt. It would be unfair to everyone. Shirniange did not mind. After all, she could do whatever she wanted. She had eaten these street food before, but when she ran in with Zhao Xiaoqing today, she strangely felt good. Now, even when she ate the mutton skewers, she felt especially excited. Was that person really Tang Xiao's father? Zhao Xiaoqing had just bitten off a piece of meat from the mutton skewer and asked vaguely. Shirniange also answered vaguely. Anne. Tang Xiao really couldn't coax you back, so he asked his father for help? No, he's a little scummy, but he's not that stupid. Shirniange took a tissue and wiped her mouth. All along, the Tang family has wanted to have a long-term cooperation with the Shi family. I think I've heard my parents mention this before. It's just that there's a very good project, and the Tang family wants to make money from it. Once, Uncle Tang came to my house to deliver something and saw me. Later, he somehow found out about my age and school. He also found out that I actually know his son, so he treated us to a few meals and match-made us a few times. So you guys were brought together? I thought the two of you were in love freely. It turns out that what others say about rich families not having true free love and having arranged marriages like before is true? It's not that exaggerated. It's just the right time, the right place, and the right people to be together. We don't have any feelings for each other. We just like each other. Plus, our parents have some cooperation, so we just dated for 2 months. After speaking, Shirniange threw away the bamboo stick in her hand. She turned to buy 2 glasses of water and returned. She handed one to Zhao Xiaoqing. Tang Xiao has nothing to do with me. In the past we met by coincidence, so don't look at me. Xiaoqing, Shirniange paused in her drinking and glanced at Zhao Xiaoqing. In the afternoon, when the teacher was helping her with the lesson, he had asked her how she had built a good relationship with Qin Sighting. At that time, she had only said that they had been sitting together for a long time, and would occasionally exchange a few words, so they were considered familiar. Now that she was being said this, was it so obvious that she liked Qin Sighting? Then Qin Sighting would definitely be able to tell. But he actually went to the school library. Zhao Xiaoqing was drinking water. She did not know why Shirniange was suddenly spinning around happily. She was about to call out to her, but Shirniange had already walked to a small stall by the side to look at all kinds of couple accessories. Zhao Xiaoqing. Eldest miss, isn't it too early? The wolf has just seen the meat. He doesn't even know if he can eat it. Are you even going to prepare the bowls and chopsticks? She knew that Qin Sighting had gone out for a competition a few days ago, and had returned yesterday. So she would definitely go to school today. She would definitely not skip class. Early in the morning, Shirniange bought a few glass bottles of warm milk from the fresh milk shop outside the school, and put them in her school bag. Right now the weather was just right. It was neither cold nor hot. Some girls in the school were still wearing summer clothes, and had an autumn school uniform jacket draped over them. Shirniange, on the other hand, had long changed into a long-sleeved shirt and trousers. Her shoulder-length hair was casually tied up, and there were some natural bangs on her forehead. Her school bag was slightly heavy because of the few bottles of milk in it. She carried it on one shoulder, and held the bag strap on her shoulder with her hand. She walked directly into the surging crowd of students. When she entered the class, she saw that her dear deskmate had already arrived. After all, she had been delayed for a while when she bought the milk. It was almost time for morning self-study. Qin Sighting was rarely late. She walked over with a smile that was as bright as the morning sun. She saw that the tall and thin boy was still wearing a white t-shirt inside, and the same school uniform as her outside. Perhaps because Qin Sighting was tall and had a good figure. Such an ordinary school uniform jacket on him made him look like a handsome male celebrity in those branded sportswear advertisements. Looking at it this way, Nianj inexplicably felt that the school uniform on her body was becoming more and more beautiful. No wonder she, who rarely obediently wore school uniforms in the past, had been wearing them more and more frequently recently. And because sitting together like this, they looked like a couple. Before she sat down, she took out a bottle of milk from her school bag and placed it on Qin Sighting's desk. He did not move, and she was not in a hurry to speak. She sat down and raised her eyes to see that when the form teacher came in to check on the morning self-study, she took out a book from her bag and whispered, "I just bought it. It's still warm." At such an early hour, the teacher had just arrived at work. After entering the class to take a look, he returned to the office to prepare for class. From time to time, the quiet classroom would be filled with all sorts of quiet conversations. How Xiuxia, who was behind her, gently poked her with his pen. When she turned back, he glanced at the milk on Qin Sighting's desk and mouthed, "Where's mine?" Zhao Xiaoqing nudged Hao Xiuxia's arm with the corner of her book and glared at him, telling him not to be so shameless. Nianj was amused. She took out 2 more bottles from her bag and gave them to them. She whispered, "I definitely won't leave you behind. There's a straw here. Open it and drink it yourself." Hao Xiuxia did not expect that there would really be one for him. He immediately took the straw and chuckled. Zhao Xiaoqing also took it in surprise and glanced at it, asking, "Why doesn't Almighty Qin have a straw?" Chapter 1451. Nianj immediately took out a bottle of milk and 2 straws from her bag. She knew that Qin Sighting would definitely not take the initiative to drink it. She reached out and took the milk on his table back. She opened her hand and placed the straw in front of him. Then, "To thank you for helping me choose the book yesterday. Don't you think my way of thanking you and my service are very inappropriate? Can you give me some face again?" Qin Sighting glanced at the milk she pushed over. He did not speak or look at her, but he picked it up and drank it. Nianj did not expect it to go so smoothly, although she felt that he did not hate her. When she saw that he really drank it this time, she was so happy that her heart raced. She looked in his direction for a long time, and saw that after drinking the milk, he still picked up the water on the table to take a sip. She accidentally saw his Adam's apple moving as he drank the water. Was an 18-year-old boy's Adam's apple already so sexy and good-looking? Nianj stared at the way he drank water and muttered, "Did you drink milk in the past?" "No." Qin Sighting did not look at her, but his voice was indifferent as he replied, "Usually, when you're at home in the morning, won't the auntie at home force you to drink milk? I remember that ever since I could remember, I would be forced to drink a glass of milk by the auntie every morning. Even if she doesn't force me to drink it, I have to buy some. Otherwise, I feel like something's missing." She muttered softly. It was actually a very boring topic, but she simply wanted to take the opportunity to talk to him, even if it was just one more sentence. Qin Sighting was silent for a moment before saying, "I don't like the taste. I rarely drink it." "Ah, you don't like it?" Nianj glanced at the empty milk bottle. "Then why did you?" Qin Sighting did not answer. He turned to look at the school bag she had specially used to store the milk. "This is the last time. Don't buy it next time." Although it sounded like a refusal and an order, there was also a hint of gentleness in it. Nianj's heart pounded for a long time. When she returned to her senses, Qin Sighting had already focused on solving the math problems and ignored her. She pinched the bottle of milk that she hadn't drunk, turned her head, and leaned on the table to slowly ease and calm down her emotions. She didn't dare to raise her head to show too much of her abnormality, but her face was indeed a little hot at this moment. She seemed to be able to hear her idol's voice that was a little softer than usual. "This is the last time. Don't buy it next time." How could she be so gentle? Huh. Was he in a good mood today? He didn't keep a cold face the whole time? Or was it because he had long known that she liked him? Yesterday, he had heard her say that he was good-looking, so he wasn't the cold and aloof type that would break a girl's heart. Would he be gentler to a girl who admired him? But that wasn't right. In the entire school, The number of girls who liked him and had a crush on him could circle the school building 3 times. But he had never smiled at any of them. It was said that there was once a class beauty who chased after him from the 1st floor to the 5th floor of the school, just to get his phone number. But she still couldn't get him to look back, let alone his phone number. Would she be able to get it? Because we're deskmates. Slowly, after a long time, could she save his phone number in her phone? After finally obtaining her idol's cold treatment, she seemed to have a new goal. She only occasionally saw Uncle Chin. Auntie Xiang would also go over to prepare delicious food for her when she was in school every day. At other times, Shi Nianj was already used to being independent. If there was nothing necessary, she didn't want to return to the Shi family. She only wanted to stay in Lishui Villa. After all, her parents had yet to return to China. Hearing that it was the weekend, and that she still planned to stay there, Uncle Chin did not force her. After giving a few instructions, he hung up. It was precisely because it was Friday that Zhao Xiaoqing thought that Shi Nianj would have a chauffeur to pick her up today. So she left early. Shi Nianj unhurriedly packed up her books and papers and went out. When she walked out of the school, she habitually walked toward the parking lot. When she realized that she had just told Uncle Chin not to pick her up, she was about to turn around to take a taxi back to Lishui Villa, when she suddenly saw a few boys dressed as hooligans from another school walking in this direction with cigarettes in one hand and baseball bats in the other. As a girl, she didn't want to watch so much. It was common for hooligans to fight in and out of school. She only took a glance and was about to walk further away when she suddenly saw Chin Sighting walking out. He had clearly left the class earlier than her. Why did he only come out now? It seemed like the student cadres were often kept behind by the teachers or the director for questioning. They didn't have much time. Chin Sighting was holding a black one-handed bag in one hand and answering a phone with the other. He had only taken 2 steps when he suddenly stopped. He looked forward at the hooligans who had already thrown away their cigarettes and were surrounding him. Seeing that he was surrounded by those people, Shi Nianj's hair instantly stood on end. What was going on? Were these people here to cause trouble for him? Who did Chin Sighting offend? Was it because he won the physics competition 2 days ago and was taller than the students from the neighboring schools? Was that why he was being targeted? Was he being targeted? Before she could come up with a countermeasure, her legs had already gone beyond the range of her brain's control. She quickly rushed over and directly ran behind those hooligans. She even pushed the 2 people in front of her, who were holding baseball bats, aside. Excuse me. She ran too fast and pushed the 2 hooligans forward. Before they could react, they saw a girl suddenly rush over. She stepped forward and grabbed the boy's arm. Without a word, she dragged him out of the crowd. What happened just now? I don't know. A girl suddenly ran over. She was very strong and suddenly pushed me. I almost King fell. Where is she? She ran away. She ran in and dragged someone away. I don't know what she's doing. She's probably just passing by. Ignore her. CK. Continue looking for Zhao Hu. That brat crippled one of my brother's legs yesterday. If I don't remove his arm, I'll write my name backwards. As the crowd walked away, Shi Nianj had already dragged Chin Sighting's arm 20 to 30 meters away. When she felt that those people did not seem to be chasing after her, she stopped and turned back to look, panting. She then looked at Chin Sighting, who she had dragged all the way here. She looked him up and down. Are you all right? Chin Sighting's handsome brows were still cold. He glanced at her hand that was still holding his arm and raised his brows, indicating for her to let go. Chapter 1452. Shi Nianj received his gaze and realized something. Her face heated up, and she quickly retracted her hand. I'm talking about those people just now. Are they here to cause trouble for you? They're all holding weapons in their hands. As Shi Nianj spoke, she glanced behind him and realized that those people still did not chase after her. Strange, weren't they here to cause trouble for him? Which eye of yours saw those people looking for me? Chin Sighting retracted his hand that she had already let go of. He placed one hand in his pocket and looked at her with clear eyes. I saw them walking toward you, and as soon as you came out they surrounded you. I just happened to walk out. We were just passing by. Qin's sighting was expressionless. Right now, he was standing on the side of the road, and she was already standing with 1 foot below. He was originally much taller than her, and now, he looked down at her. Seeing that she had run to the tip of her nose with just a few steps, he narrowed his eyes, as though something in the night sky had suddenly blocked the original starlight. Even if you really came to look for me, why did you suddenly run over? Cherniange was momentarily speechless. She said she wanted to protect him? It seemed like she was overestimating herself, and would even be mocked for watching too many television dramas. Did she think that a little girl like her could handle any situation? But why did she rush over at that time? If she said that it was because he was good-looking, what she would receive would not be the occasional interaction between his deskmates. She would probably be treated coldly again. After all, even she felt that it was a little too rash. Besides, he was a man. Why should she have the mentality to protect him? She did not speak, and just stood on the spot to look at him. As he was tall, she had no choice but to raise her head to look at him. The sunlight shone from behind him. Although the boy was standing with his back to the light, she could not see him clearly. At the very least, she could see his eyes. In the reflection, there seemed to be her. Haven't you considered if you'll be injured? Qin's sighting asked. Cherniange didn't know how to explain, so she decided not to. I didn't think too much about it. Didn't think about it? Qin's sighting's eyes were cold and clear. Miss Sure, no matter what happens to the Qin family, if something happens to you here, I'm afraid it won't be that easy for us to get away with it. If you're injured and disfigured, will your parents let it go? You know I'm from the Sure family. I thought you didn't know anything about me. Qin's sighting was indifferent. When you sit beside me and introduce yourself, I can hear you. But you didn't respond to what I said to you when I was beside you, so you could hear me. Cherniange looked at him. Her eyes were bright and pure. To put it simply, she was reminding him how sincere she was when she sat by his side. To put it bluntly, she was scolding him for pretending to be deaf. Qin's sighting glanced at her again, and turned to leave without saying anything. You're leaving just like that? He stopped and turned back to look at her. Otherwise, at least I saved you just now. Qin's sighting's indifferent eyes moved slightly, but he still looked indifferent. The slight change in expression on his face was clearly because of her so-called saving him. What I'm saying is, I risked my life to save you just now because we're deskmates. Regardless of whether it's a misunderstanding or not, my heart is good. You can't be so cold. You have to give me some kind of response. Qin's sighting looked at her silently for a while, as though he couldn't understand her train of thought. However, at this moment, there was already a commotion at the school gate. From the sound, it was obvious that the people inside had already started fighting. This confirmed that Cherniange had indeed misunderstood. That group of people had indeed wanted to take advantage of the fact that there were no security guards, and the mailroom master at the door to barge in and fight. Coincidentally, Qin's sighting had come out at that time. Cherniange took advantage of the chaos to walk to his side. Looking at the man who was a head taller than her, she raised her hand and gently tugged on his sleeve. Qin's sighting was already used to her little action of tugging at his sleeve. Even if he didn't accept it, he had never wanted to accept it. After all, they had been deskmates for 3 weeks. His gaze shifted an inch toward her. Seeing that he did not immediately turn around and leave, but at least paid attention to her. Even if he did not speak, he would not treat her as if she did not exist. Cherniange smiled at him. Usually, a chauffeur will pick me up at this time. Today my chauffeur Uncle Qin has applied for leave. It's meaningless for me to go back alone. We've been deskmates for a while. Why don't we take this opportunity to have a meal together? Qin's sighting's expression did not change. He only glanced at her indifferently, and listened to her continue to find excuses. Actually, my parents are busy with the company abroad. I live alone in High City, so I live near the school. Zhao Xiaoqing left first today. I haven't eaten yet. Qin's sighting looked at her and suddenly smiled. The moment Cherniange was mesmerized by his smile turned into a cold smile. Then, he indifferently retracted his smile, and pulled his sleeve out of her hand mercilessly. He stuffed one hand back into his trouser pocket, and left with the other holding his shoulder bag. Shirnianj stood behind him and looked at him. She sighed. She clearly knew that it was impossible to eat. What was wrong with her brain? Even if it was just a suggestion to walk together, how could she agree to eat? Just as Shirnianj stood on the spot dejectedly, and did not chase after him, she was somewhat melancholy considering whether she should eat outside, or return to Lishui Villa tonight. Qin Sighting, who had already walked more than 10 steps away from her, suddenly stopped in front of the black commercial car. It was the car that Shirnianj found familiar. It was the car she had seen last time, when she helped buy the medicine for cholecystitis. The car had just stopped in front of Qin Sighting. He did not even take a second look before turning back. The moment he turned back, he saw that Shirnianj was still standing there with her eyes wide open. She looked at him blankly. In fact, she was considering where to eat, sweet, salty, or spicy. Before Shirnianj could pull herself back from her attention, the tall and thin boy had already approached quickly. He stepped forward and grabbed her wrist. He turned around and took her away in the opposite direction of the school. Shirnianj's expression was shocked. Before she could even return to her senses, she looked at the person who had left and returned. She then lowered her head to look at her wrist. Even though it was only her wrist, there was still the warmth of his palm. It was so real that Shirnianj's face was instantly filled with question marks and exclamation marks. Chapter 1453. Even when she was brought into the crowded street near the school, Shirnianj had yet to return to her senses. When she finally returned to her senses, the warmth on her wrist had already left. She lowered her head to look at her hand, and then at the indifferent boy. Seeing that Qin Sighting's expression was much colder than before, and then seeing her dumbfounded expression, his handsome brows moved slightly. He then looked at her wrist where he had held it earlier. "Is your hand stiff?" He looked at her hand that seemed to be suspended in midair, and asked coldly. Shirnianj abruptly lowered her hand and blinked. "No." Qin Sighting did not say more. He returned to his senses, and looked at the restaurants behind him. This street was mostly suitable for students to buy. There were many restaurants of various sizes. Although they were not too luxurious, it was still possible to find a clean restaurant. He said, "Didn't you say you haven't eaten? What do you want to eat?" Shirnianj looked at him. The hand that she had just put down quietly reached behind her back, and pinched her other hand. After confirming that it would indeed hurt, and that everything in front of her was real, she quickly said before Qin Sighting became impatient or regretful, "Anything is fine." Qin Sighting glanced at her thin appearance under her school uniform. His gaze shifted away from the beef noodle shop behind her. He turned back and saw a restaurant with stir-fried dishes. He turned around and walked over. Under his silence, Shirnianj understood and quickly followed. After entering the shop, she saw that there were already 2 tables of students eating. However, the students from the other schools nearby did not know each other, and did not interfere with each other. Qin Sighting walked to the quiet table inside, and put down his black shoulder bag. When he looked back, he saw that she had already quickly followed him, and signaled the waiter to give her the menu. When she received the menu, Shirnianj was still in a daze. Earlier, he had clearly rejected her. Why did he suddenly turn around and treat her to a meal without saying a word? She raised her head to look at him. At this moment, Qin Sighting's phone rang. Not wanting to disturb him from answering the call, she quickly ordered 2 drinks and 2 light dishes from the waiter. She then asked him to leave first. She planned to ask him what he wanted to eat after he answered the call. However, after she finished ordering, she realized that Qin Sighting did not answer the phone. The waiter had already walked far away. When Shirnianj sat down, she heard his phone ring again. Qin Sighting sat down opposite her, and took out his phone. She didn't know if he had turned it off or muted it. Before she could see clearly, she saw him throw his phone to the side, and not look at it again. "Aren't you going to answer it?" Shirnianj asked. Qin Sighting did not answer. Chapter 1454. It was a quiet mealtime. As expected, Qin Sighting prepared to leave after eating. He did not have the courtesy of sending a female classmate home after eating. He was simply perfunctory, and was about to part ways. Don't think that she couldn't tell that he had suddenly turned to pull her away. He must have used her as a female classmate to avoid the people he didn't want to see in the car. Now that he had used her and treated her to a meal, he was about to leave without explaining. However, Shirniange was quite happy to be used. She was also full. The two of them walked out of the restaurant, and the clean youth walked by her side. If they were not going to separate and return to their own homes, but to Lishui Villa together, they could stroll on the path home for 10 to 20 minutes. How good would that be? Just thinking about it would be beautiful. She turned around and saw that he was holding a shoulder bag. His clean and slender fingers were also very beautiful. She suddenly smiled. Just as Chin Sighting was about to walk in the opposite direction, she suddenly leaned over. Almighty Chin, good deskmate. Can you give me your contact number? Chin Sighting paused in his steps and lowered his head to look at her. She smiled at him and reached out her hand to him. We've been deskmates for so long, and we've eaten together. It's just a phone number. There's no need to not give it, right? Chin Sighting looked at Shirniange and said indifferently, You're thinking too much. I'm not thinking much. I just know someone. It's not too much to ask for his phone number. Shirniange did not care how cold his attitude was. Shirniange didn't care how cold his attitude was. She was already used to it. She leaned close to him and maintained a close distance from him. She looked up at him and tugged on the zipper of his backpack. Anyway, I'll be able to ask you sooner or later. Instead of being pestered by me in the future, why don't you give it to me now? I promise I won't call you for no reason, nor will I send random messages. I'll quietly let your number lie in my phone's contact list. I definitely won't harass you. Chin Sighting looked at her and ignored her. He walked away. On the crowded street, many students in school uniforms were walking around. The clean and tall young man was wearing a white t-shirt and a blue and white school uniform. His black backpack made his back look even colder. He didn't even look back as he walked away. Shirniange, on the other hand, stood there alone and laughed foolishly. I knew it wouldn't be that easy. Forget it. Anyway, she had just eaten with Chin Sighting. Just this alone was enough for her to be happy for the entire semester. Hee. On Saturday afternoon, Shirniange had just finished writing the papers for her homework at home. She was still checking the difficult questions when her phone rang. She glanced at the number and got up to answer the call. She walked out to pour herself a glass of water and walked to the spacious balcony of the bedroom opposite the study. Nien Nien, do you miss Mom and Dad? When we go back at the end of this month, do you have any gifts that you want? Shall I buy it for you? Her mother, Ms. Yang Jinjin, sounded very cheerful on the other end of the phone. She didn't need to guess to know that Shida Group's new cooperation in America was going smoothly, and it should be a very big deal. In recent years, Shida Group had been rising rapidly in High City. It was doing very well in all aspects, and was already highly regarded by the industry. It had already begun to look like a large enterprise. Her parents were getting busier and busier. When she was young, they rarely had time to accompany her. Now they only saw each other a few times a year. She leaned against the balcony to drink water and listened to Mrs. Yang Jinjin's smiling voice. She curved her lips. There's no need. I don't lack anything. When you fly back, choose a good weather so that you won't get airsick when the plane is bumpy. Just be careful. Little girl, you've been like a little adult since you were young. I'm airsick because of the after-effects of being pregnant with you. I've never been airsick in the past. As Mrs. Yang Jinjin spoke, she suddenly said, Coincidentally, Mom has nothing to do today. Come, report to your mother about the recent situation in school. Are you used to everything after skipping grades to year 3? Is there a lot of pressure in your studies? Year 3, you can imagine. Shirniange smiled. If I say there's no pressure, you'll definitely be able to tell that I'm lying to you. Is it very difficult? If it really doesn't work, ask your grandfather to talk to the school. There's no need. I'm fine. You don't have to interfere. She had just had a meal with her male god. To her, it could be said that their relationship had taken a sharp turn. It was very likely that she would receive his phone number tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, they would become boyfriend and girlfriend, and the day after that they would kiss. How could she go back to year 2 to be a junior? All right, let's talk about it after your dad and I go back. Right now, the family's company is indeed getting busier and busier. Mom and Dad might really neglect you in too many ways. Nian Nian, you've been so sensible since you were young. Mom really feels sorry. She looked at the villa that seemed to have never been lived in before. She looked at the bare villa yard and said to the phone, "When I was 7 years old, when you said these words, I might have hugged you in my dad's legs and cried for a while. Now I don't feel it anymore. Besides, at my age, freedom is a different kind of happiness. You don't have to owe me anything." Madame Yang Jinjin sighed, and finally decided to return to the topic at hand. "Nian Nian, Mom wants to discuss something with you." Hearing the tone of the other party, Nianj roughly guessed something. "Is it about my plan to apply for the medical university again?" "Yes, although you're still young, you should be very clear about Shida Group's current situation. Your father and I only have one daughter. In the future, we'll have to leave all kinds of heavy responsibilities to our own children. We hope that you can give up your dream of studying medicine. It's enough to have a medical expert like your grandfather at home. You should go abroad to learn business management and business finance. If you agree, your father and I will arrange for you to stay in America when you're about to graduate." Nianj was not in a hurry to refuse. After a moment of silence, she gently placed the cup of water on the balcony. "Mom, I didn't grow up in your office, but in my grandfather's laboratory." "Nian Nian, I know what you want to say, but your father and I really hope that. You know what you owe me. I've never complained. I've been used to making my own decisions since I was young, so I still plan to follow my own path in the future. Grandfather is also a guest professor at the medical university. Studying medicine is the path I've thought about a long time ago. I won't change it. Nian Nian. When you come back, ask Uncle Qin to pick me up. Recently, I'll be living near the school. I won't be returning to the Shi family." With that, Nianj hung up the phone, picked up the cup, and turned to return to the study. Chapter 1455. On Monday, when they went to school, the teacher checked the papers they had done at home over the weekend, and was furious. This was because the correct answers for the exam this time were at least 2 levels higher than before. As a result, many people were on the verge of passing. More than half of the students failed, and there was not even a single full score. The reason he did not get full marks was that Qin Sighting had handed in a blank paper. Of course, the teacher did not dare to ask why Crown Prince Qin, who was usually outstanding and always scored full marks, handed in a blank paper this week. She only asked around during class and learned from a teacher, who went on a business trip over the weekend, that he saw Qin Sighting at the airport early Saturday morning. He was probably not in High City for the weekend, and did not take the time to write the papers. Qin Sighting did not explain at all. He did not even find a reason to hand in a blank paper. This really made the teacher love and hate him. As a result, the entire morning class was spent in a gloomy mood. Even the physical education class was occupied by the form teacher. He asked the entire class to sit together and analyze the questions. It wasn't easy for her to endure until noon. Nianj's mind was already in a mess. She turned to look at Qin Sighting, and saw that he was actually writing the weekend's papers. The teacher had clearly explained the entire paper in the morning class, and planned to leave another paper with the same model, but different questions tonight. He just needed everyone to remember these ideas. However, what she saw was that Qin Sighting had written 2 ways to solve the question. The final answer was the same, but both methods were correct. She asked in surprise, "Male God, are you planning to study science all the way to the end? Are you going to MIT after graduation?" By the time she realized that she had accidentally blurted out the word male God, Qin Sighting had already stopped writing and turned to look at her. Nianj's expression did not change much, nor did she deliberately hide the embarrassment of accidentally calling him a male god. She only naturally blinked at him and smiled even wider at him. "It doesn't matter what I learn. After all, I'm not on the same path as you." Qin Sighting retracted his gaze and continued to disintegrate. The black pen moved slightly in his hand, leaving behind rows of clear, beautiful and smooth words. At the same time, he seemed to have thought of something and said coldly without raising his eyelids, "I only need to tolerate you sitting by my side for another year." Shirniange rolled her eyes at the pen in his hand. "Of course not. After all, I'm going to study medicine. Save the dying and help the injured, understand?" The brush in Qin Sighting's hand stopped, and he turned to look at her. Shirniange was unconvinced by his words earlier. All that was left was the appearance of the clean and handsome young man, sitting there quietly looking at her. That kind of calm but not distant and indifferent gaze. Her heart was no longer angry, but her face began to heat up. In the afternoon experiment class, Zhao Xiaoqing waved her hand in front of Shirniange's eyes. When she saw her raise her head, she said, "You're not normal this afternoon. At noon, you seem to have been abandoned. Then, you were happy the entire afternoon. What's wrong?" "Really?" Shirniange lowered her head to do the experiment. "Aren't I very happy every day? Being lively and happy is different from being happy like a kitten that has stolen a fish." Zhao Xiaoqing leaned over and asked, "Did Almighty Qin give you his phone number?" "No." "Then why are you smiling foolishly?" Shirniange looked at the other students around her and carefully whispered into Zhao Xiaoqing's ear, "When I was sleeping at noon, Qin Sighting looked at me." "Ah, why did Almighty Qin look at you?" "That's right. Why did he look at me?" Shirniange's smile widened. "How long did he look at you? Just a few seconds, right? You're so happy in a few seconds. Maybe he's looking at you because your arm was on top of his paper when you were sleeping? I don't care. Anyway, he looked at me." Shirniange was still very happy. Her eyes were curved, and there seemed to be stars in her eyes. She turned back to look behind her and saw that Qin Sighting was assisting the teacher with the experiment. The white lab coat on him was especially eye-catching. It was really good-looking. She wondered if she would have the chance to see him wear a doctor's white coat in the future. That would be a dream come true. She subconsciously rushed to catch it, but an arm by her side caught the phone at a faster speed. She bent down too quickly, and her chin hit his shoulder. Shirniange raised her eyes and met Qin Sighting's gaze. Most importantly, this posture was very, very close. It was as though they could feel each other's breathing in an instant. Zhao Xiaoqing almost screamed when she saw this from behind. Qin Sighting turned his eyes away and placed his phone back on her table, not minding it at all. However, Shirniange felt that her chin, face, and ears were rapidly heating up. She quickly picked up her phone and felt that it was a little hot. She turned back to see that Zhao Xiaoqing was covering her mouth and laughing, as though she had seen something ambiguous. Just now, she really felt Qin Sighting's breathing. So close. Shirniange took a deep breath and decided not to go out. The central air conditioner outside was probably because of her father. He didn't want their relationship to be too stiff. This kind of relationship between families shouldn't be handled by students like them. She couldn't be bothered to care. Right now, she only knew that her heart was about to jump out. Her nose seemed to be stained with Qin Sighting's breath. Shirniange raised her hand to touch her face. It was so hot. Chapter 1457. At night, a few distant relatives came to Zhao Xiaoqing's house today. They chatted with her parents. Originally, a house of more than 100 square meters was enough for a family of 3 to live in. But because there were more people, it could not fit. Zhao Xiaoqing was preparing to go to her aunt's house next door to stay. She even said that the papers would probably be torn up by her aunt's 2-year-old baby when she was halfway through. After all, her aunt had to take care of the child. She didn't know if she could sleep soundly there. Shirniange simply brought Zhao Xiaoqing to her place. In any case, she was the only one living in the house in Lishui Villa. There were 2 floors up and down, and she was alone every day. With Zhao Xiaoqing living there, it would be more lively. After the 2 of them reached home, they finished the 2 papers and tested each other's English listening skills. By the time they finished the homework and revision tasks given by the teacher, it was already past 8 in the evening. I heard from the teacher that from next month onwards, we won't be able to leave school before 6 o'clock. Until the college entrance examination, we might have to study in school until 9 o'clock at night. Zhao Xiaoqing lay on the balcony, holding the milk tea Shirniange had just made for her. As she drank it, she said somewhat melancholy, "In addition to the homework every day, I feel that it'll be very difficult to sleep before 12. Shirniange smiled and took out another cup of milk tea. The milk tea at home was also made by Auntie Xiang. It was much better than the milk tea outside. It was also healthy and clean. Earlier, Zhao Xiaoqing had only taken a sip when she stood on the balcony with a look of pleasant surprise, and almost cried out, exclaiming that it was delicious. "Nian Nian, what time do you usually sleep?" Zhao Xiaoqing asked. "Me around 11 o'clock. That won't do. We're spending more and more time in school, and we have more and more homework when we get home. We can't finish it before 11 o'clock. Zhao Xiaoqing looked dejected. There are still so many months before next year's college entrance examination. I really feel like I've fallen into the darkness. I don't know when I'll see the light. The college entrance examination is really too scary. I'll write some during self-study at night. I'll write some more when I come back at night. It shouldn't be a problem." Shirniange sat by her side. The two girls sat on the balcony, drinking milk tea and chatting. The sky had already turned dark. Zhao Xiaoqing looked at the large, but seemingly uninhabited villa opposite her. "Is there no one living opposite you? Or is the owner of the house not back yet? It's already so late, why aren't the lights on? I don't think there's anyone here. I've been living here for quite some time now, and I've never seen the lights on across the street." Shirniange saw that the milk tea in Zhao Xiaoqing's cup was almost finished and reached out to take it. "Do you still want to drink?" Zhao Xiaoqing looked conflicted. "I still want to drink, but it's too late. If I drink too much, I probably won't be able to sleep." "I think so too. Then I'll give you more milk." "Great Nian Nian, I really didn't expect that. Your Shi family is also very famous in High City, but you actually have such a good personality, and are so clever with your hands. Your house is also clean, and you don't have the temper of a rich young lady at all. When you grow up, if any man can marry you, it will definitely be a blessing that he has cultivated for several lifetimes." As Zhao Xiaoqing spoke, she followed her in. She stuck her head out and looked at the milk tea powder in Shirniange's hand. She pointed and said, "I am more. Don't really put fresh milk in it. This milk tea powder tastes really good. If it really doesn't work, I'll drink another cup. At most, we'll lose sleep together tonight." The two of them played at home for a long time until they finished showering in the master bedroom and guest bedroom. Shirniange was about to go to the guest bedroom to see if she needed anything when Zhao Xiaoqing's scream suddenly came from the study next door. "Ah!" When Shirniange heard the heart-wrenching scream, she rushed to the study in fright. When she pushed open the door, she saw Zhao Xiaoqing sitting on the ground with a pale face. She stared at the complete human skeleton in her study in fear. "Shirniange, Nian Nian, what is this? Why does your house have this?" Zhao Xiaoqing was so frightened that she could not speak clearly. Her eyes were red. She stood up from the ground and quickly moved behind her to hide. Shirniange could clearly feel that her hands were cold from fright. "Cough, I forgot that the guest bedroom is too close to my study. I should have closed the study door earlier." Shirniange looked at the human skeleton inside. "Don't be afraid. It's just a skeleton." "It's a real skeleton?" "That's right." "A human skeleton?" "That's right." Zhao Xiaoqing's face turned green, and she took several steps back. "No, it's not a real human skeleton. It's just made according to the ratio of a normal human skeleton." Shirniange quickly said, "Isn't my grandfather a medical scientist? I've been influenced by him since I was young. I've always liked medical things. This skeleton was a birthday gift from my grandfather when I was 15. It's rare to see a skeleton made of this material on the market. Many doctors have this kind of thing in their homes or offices. Don't be afraid." Even if it was fake, it was too realistic. Zhao Xiaoqing turned to walk out with a pale face. Shirniange quickly closed the door. Why don't you sleep in my bedroom? I'll sleep in the guest bedroom. If you're too close to the study, you'll be afraid when you sleep. It's fine. I'll be fine after a while. I was really shocked just now. Zhao Xiaoqing sat down on the sofa and patted her chest. She then looked at her in disbelief. Do you really plan to study medicine in the future? What's wrong with that? It's so tiring to study medicine. I heard that you can't graduate in 4 years. Even if you go abroad to study, it'll be very hard. Your family is in business. Don't you plan to study finance? I've been with my grandfather for too long. Many things are deeply rooted in me, and even affect the direction of my life. I can't change them even if I want to. Zhao Xiaoqing found it hard to imagine what kind of mentality Shiniange, a girl who looked cheerful and sweet, had to calmly face such a terrifying skeleton in the study. Even if it was fake and not real bones, a very young girl lived here alone every day, and did not change her expression when facing a human skeleton. It was hard to imagine how strong her heart was. At night, Zhao Xiaoqing still could not control the fear in her heart. After lying down for half an hour, she could not take it anymore, and ran to Shiniange's bedroom to sleep. She did not plan on letting Shiniange sleep in the guest bedroom. After all, she was very afraid to sleep alone here. In the end, the two girls lay on the bed in the master bedroom. Each of them hugged a blanket, and chatted until midnight. The next day, when they went to school, each of them had a pair of dark circles under their eyes. Chapter 1458. Zhao Xiaoqing stayed at Lishui Villa for 2 nights. After her relatives left, she immediately said that she wanted to scram back home to sleep. If there was nothing serious, she definitely wouldn't dare to sleep with her family's skeleton again. 2 days later, early in the morning, Shiniange went to school by herself. When she arrived at the school gate, she received a call from Uncle Qin, informing her that her parents would be returning home in a while. He also told her when he would come to pick her up. Shiniange was chatting on the phone when she suddenly saw Qin Sighting walking over from the shady road opposite her. She immediately walked toward him uncontrollably. After all, this was the first time she saw him before entering class in the morning. She could actually see the direction he had come from. Previously, she had only seen the black commercial car driven by his mother and the Qin family's driver. But she didn't know if Qin Sighting lived in the Qin family, or lived outside, or if he lived with a good brother in school. She didn't know if he drove to school or had a car. Today, she finally saw him, and realized that he actually walked to school. He was already 18 years old, right? He should be able to get a driver's license and drive legally, right? The clean youth had the temperament of a man and a man. He was handsome and quiet, and when he walked, his long legs seemed to carry an immortal aura. No matter what in her eyes, Qin Sighting carried an immortal aura. She quickly hung up the phone, and leaned over to greet him. She sped up and ran over. She was naturally very happy to see him 10 minutes earlier than usual. When Shiniange ran over, she happened to be behind him. She reached out to pat his back, wanting to give him a surprise and greet him at the same time. However, before her hand could touch his shoulder, Qin Sighting turned around and suddenly held her wrist. A sharp pain instantly came from her wrist, as though he could break it in an instant. Seeing that it was her, Qin Sighting let go of her hand, but Shiniange covered her wrist in pain. She felt that if he had exerted a little more force, her wrist would have cracked. The pain caused a thin layer of sweat to appear on the tip of her nose. She held her wrist with one hand, and looked up at Qin Sighting. With a bitter expression she said, "I'm sorry. I should have told you in advance before touching you." Qin Sighting frowned slightly. At the same time, he saw that her wrist was already red. The expression on his face was clearly not happy. He did not know if it was because he was overly guarded, causing her wrist to turn red, or because of something else. "You go first. I won't touch you again. I'll leave later." She knew that Qin Sighting's strength was not small. Although he was fair and clean, such a tall boy must be very strong. Last time in the library, she had only thrown him there in a moment of desperation. In fact, it was very easy for him to dodge. She had thought about it later. Today, she had finally confirmed that Qin's sighting looked gentle, but he was actually a boy full of strength. It was just that the price to pay for this verification was a little high. In the future, Qin's sighting's voice sounded a little hoarse. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she felt that he didn't sleep last night. Not only did his voice sound hoarse, but his eyes were also cold and tired. However, seeing her aggrieved and unable to blame him, his handsome brows furrowed slightly. He glanced at her wrist again. "Call me before you suddenly approach." As he spoke, he suddenly reached out and tugged her wrist over. He turned it back and forth to look at it. After confirming that it was only red, and that it was probably just a physical pain, he let go. Nianj, on the other hand, recovered from the pain in her wrist, and was then stunned by the remaining temperature on her wrist. She blinked. Before she could recover, she heard him ask, "Does it hurt?" She saw that Qin's sighting seemed to be frowning, because of his defensive actions. At this moment, Nianj felt that even if her wrist was broken, it would be worth it. "It's fine. It just hurt for a while. It's fine now." Nianj quickly placed her still red wrist behind her back. Qin's sighting was still looking at her with a serious expression. Nianj smiled at him dryly, and took the opportunity to take a closer look at his expression and gaze. "Didn't you rest well last night? You don't seem to be in a good mood." Qin's sighting no longer looked at her. He turned to walk toward the school gate. Hearing that she was following him, he answered in a low voice, "N." Nianj no longer felt the pain in her wrist. She even felt that the pain was too wonderful. Qin's sighting actually did not ignore her words. Even if it was just an "un," it could at least be considered a positive response to her idle chatter. When the two of them walked into the main entrance of the school, the nearby students turned their gazes over. Nianj felt that she was open and aboveboard, and there was nothing to avoid. Her gaze was calm, and her steps were also calm. Qin's sighting completely ignored those gazes. It could be said that he had never looked at anyone passing by and walked straight in. After entering the class, Qin's sighting went to the podium to put down the papers. Nianj went to her seat alone. When she lowered her head to put down her bag, she saw that her wrist was still red. It could be seen how powerful his grip was. Logically speaking, no matter how strong Qin's sighting was, he would not suddenly use so much strength just because someone suddenly slapped him early in the morning. His defensive state earlier, coupled with the fact that he did not seem to have slept much last night, she could not help but suspect that the Qin family, one of the so-called four big families in High City, was really like what others said. There were too many secrets in a wealthy family, and everyone was not as relaxed as they seemed. At the very least, Qin's sighting seemed to have many things that she could not guess, but he clearly seemed to be in the sunlight, which made her even more confused. Qin's sighting walked over. Nianj quickly straightened his table and chair, so that he could sit down more comfortably. She then remembered that it was still very early, and that the teacher would probably arrive in half an hour. She reached out and pulled the curtain slightly, just enough to block the sunlight from Qin's sighting's table. She thought that he might be able to rest on the table for a while. When Qin's sighting walked over, he saw her actions. He then caught a glimpse of her other careful actions. At the same time, he saw the mark on her wrist that had yet to fade when she went to pull the curtains. He did not say anything, and only turned back to instruct the lifestyle committee member. The lifestyle committee member nodded in surprise and stood up to leave. Qin's sighting walked back to the table and sat down. In less than 10 minutes, the lifestyle committee member brought back an ice bag from the infirmary and gave it to Nianj, asking her to put it on her wrist. Nianj looked at the ice bag that suddenly appeared in front of her and turned to look at Qin's sighting in surprise. Seeing that he was flipping through his notes and not looking at her, her heart instantly swelled. Chapter 1459. How Xiuxia was a few minutes late today. After entering the class and sitting down, he saw that the teacher had yet to arrive. He quickly called out to Nianj from behind. "Nian Nian, quick, lend me the papers from last night to copy. My parents quarreled at home last night, causing me to go downstairs and wander around for half the night without doing my homework. Later, I was too sleepy and didn't write. Teacher Zhao will be here soon. Quickly lend it to me to copy. I promise I'll finish in 5 minutes. All right, I'll look for it. Shi Nianj turned back and saw how Xiuxia's anxious expression. She lowered her head and rummaged through her bag, but after searching for a long time, she couldn't find it. Wait a minute. Let me think where I put it. It seems to be in a book. I brought a lot of books today. Hurry up, old Zhao is coming. Every time Zhao Xiaoqing entered the class, she would hand in her papers immediately. How Xiuxia knew her habit. He knew that she didn't have any papers in her hands, so he could only look for Shi Nianj in front of her to save her. However, Shi Nianj did bring a lot of books today. She didn't know where she had placed them. Seeing how anxious the little fatty was, she said, "Why don't you copy Almighty Qin's papers first?" All right. That's even better. Almighty Qin's accuracy is 100%. I'll just copy 2/3 of it. I'll just write the rest randomly. Old Zhao definitely won't find out that I copied it. How Xiuxia nodded repeatedly. Shi Nianj saw that Qin Sighting, who was sitting by the side, heard her words but did not react. She picked up his bag and placed it on her lap. She opened it and searched. When the girl at the next table got up to pour water, she saw Shi Nianj's actions and said in surprise, "Classmate Shi, your relationship with Almighty Qin is so good. You can even rummage through Almighty Qin's bag?" Shi Nianj did not find Qin Sighting's papers, nor did she pay attention to the girl passing by. She turned to look at him. "Where's your paper?" Qin Sighting sat there without batting an eyelid. He raised his chin slightly towards the podium. Shi Nianj's sluggish brain seemed to have finally recovered her memories. Yes, he seemed to have placed the test paper on the podium first. She was still holding his bag and placing it on her lap. Seeing that he could not borrow their papers, How Xiuxia hurriedly went to the side to borrow them from others. Zhao Xiaoqing sat in the back and looked at Shi Nianj, then at Qin Sighting. She chuckled and lowered her head to send Shi Nianj a message. Almighty Qin actually let you search his bag. He's not angry. Nian Nian, how did you do it? Isn't that too awesome? Shi Nianj felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. She quickly placed her bag back on his side and took out her phone to take a look. Her heart skipped a beat. She was just used to sitting by Qin Sighting's side and being ignored by him. Usually, she adhered to the principle of doing everything herself. If she could not disturb him, she would not disturb him. For example, when she handed out the papers and took the books, she was used to reaching out to take them herself. In any case, he would not even reach out his hand. He probably wouldn't mind borrowing papers, so he didn't think too much about it just now. But now that he thought about it, it did seem a little too intimate. The key was that Qin Sighting remained calm and did not refuse. I've been desk mates with Hao Xiuxia for almost 3 years, but he never let me casually flip through his bag. Zhao Xiaoqing sent her another message. Shi Nianj didn't know how to reply. At this moment, Teacher Zhao came in. She quickly put her phone away, but for some reason, an unconcealable smile appeared on her lips. In the following days, Qin Sighting clearly repulsed her from the beginning to gradually get used to having such a person sitting by his side, even though he still wouldn't take the initiative to say or do anything to her. And his attitude was still indifferent, at the very least. He would occasionally communicate normally. Sometimes, when Shi Nianj asked him some questions, he would answer her with a few words. His answers would not be particularly few, and gradually, he would answer more. Even if he said one more word than yesterday, Shi Nianj would be happy for the entire day. She had never thought that her thoughts would be completely occupied by one person every day. At Shi Nianj's age, she usually didn't have much to worry about. Other than her parents wanting her to study finance and medicine, there didn't seem to be anything that worried her too much in life. Using her parents was only a suggestion. They didn't force her to make a choice, so she didn't have anything to be unhappy about. Right now, her heart was filled with Qin Sighting every day. As long as he turned to look at her while she was speaking, she would be especially happy. It was almost the middle school entrance exam. Recently, the third-year students had entered the state of studying until 9:30 a.m. every day. Everyone's faces were much more haggard than 2 months ago, because they were too focused on the exam and revision. Recently, because her parents had returned to China, She had to be brought back to the Sher family by Uncle Chin every day. At night, she had to accompany her parents to chat and do her homework. She could only sleep after 11:30 a.m., but her sleep quality had always been good. When she woke up in the morning, she was in a good state. Furthermore, there was a top student sitting beside her. Right now, Chin Sighting would answer most of her questions about her studies. Her grades had improved by leaps and bounds. She couldn't be ranked at the top of the school year, but she definitely wouldn't be at the bottom. She placed the thermos cup she brought in the morning on Chin Sighting's table. This is the fruit tea Auntie made. I left it in the fridge last night. It's cold and especially delicious. Try it. Chin Sighting glanced at her and looked away. He did not drink it. It's not the very sweet kind. It's just a very pure fruit tea. Everyone has tasted the milk tea powder I brought to our class last month. You've tasted it too. You definitely know my auntie's skills. Sher Nianj opened the lid and handed it to him. Try it. It's cold and refreshing. Chin Sighting glanced at the lid in front of him and took a sip. Sher Nianj smiled and closed the lid. I thought you'd like it, so I specially brought it. I saw that you don't usually drink coffee or milk tea, nor do you eat meat. You're more accepting of fruits and vegetables, so you'll definitely like this fruit tea. After drinking, Chin Sighting made a light end sound and did not say anything. Sher Nianj was used to it. After a while she said, It's going to be the midterm exam soon. I haven't finished my second-year courses. I still don't know half of the third-year courses. I might have more questions in the next few days. Do you think I'm too talkative? Chin Sighting did not reply. Although he had replied quite a few times now, he did not reply every time. Speaking of this, Sher Nianj was still quite depressed because she had yet to obtain Chin Sighting's phone number. That time when they ate on the street, it was only because of a coincidence that it became the only time. Later on, even if she wanted to meet him in the school cafeteria, she did not have the chance. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.